Chapter 291. 1,000 pills form a cauldron. Bitterness arose from deep within Chu Yuyan's heart as she thought about her world of illusions. She looked up at the two trial-by-fire candidates at the mountain's peak. One was Fang Mu. His presence felt accidental, and yet she sensed she'd known all along it would be this way. Then there was Yi Feimu, chosen of the Tao of Alchemy. His presence would have surprised her if he were absent. "I lost," she said, turning to walk down the mountain. This peak could be ascended but not descended. One step back meant forfeiture and departure from the celestial land. As her foot descended, her vision blurred. When it cleared, she stood on the peak of Eastern Emergence Mountain. The alchemists of the East Pill Division and visiting sect cultivators looked on. She understood they could not see what had happened inside her world of illusions. Looking at the screens projected by the pill furnace, she saw only Fang Mu's thoughtful expression, not the world he was in. "Welcome back," said Pill Demon with a slight smile. Chu Yuyan suddenly wanted to weep. The world of illusions felt so real that even now, back in reality, she struggled to tell them apart. She walked silently to stand next to Pill Demon. After Chu Yuyan, the old man and middle-aged man appeared in quick succession, defeated. Eyes vacant, they walked to sit cross-legged with the other alchemists, staring blankly as if their souls were lost. Hushed discussions immediately sprang up. Just what exactly did they experience in the final test in the world of illusions? Why do they all look so confused? Even the majority of the master alchemists of the East Pill Division were unclear about the details and began to make various speculations. Seeing the questioning looks on their disciples' faces, the sub-patriarchs from the various sects began to discuss the matter. The world of illusions in the Violet Fate sect's celestial land uses the heart as a seed to grow illusions. Under its influence, none can tell true from false, not even nascent soul cultivators. You never awaken within the illusion, therefore, it's another life. Yes, within it past and future lives matter not, it's a dreamland. As for telling dream from reality, past from future, few can do that now. Upon waking, the illusions shatter, that's why they look so confused. They discussed the matter while actually training their disciples on reality versus illusion. Such spectacles rarely occurred. Any enlightenment was good fortune. Li Shiki muttered, then asked quietly, "The illusion shatters when they wake. What if someone gains enlightenment but the illusion doesn't shatter? Could they achieve deeper enlightenment?" Tu Luo responded coolly, "Don't contemplate such enlightenment's value. If someone became clear-headed enough to prevent the illusion from collapsing, that would require incredibly powerful spiritual sense, Tao enlightenment in fact. It can only happen serendipitously, never by choice. In my entire life, I've seen one person do it." The second sword lord of the solitary sword sect added, "Furthermore, doing so is incredibly dangerous. The longer one stays, the greater the chance of becoming lost and unable to emerge." A rippling buzz filled the air as Yi Feimu awoke. Watching the screen, people saw him look at Meng Hao, his face darkening. He chose to retreat, leaving the celestial land and returning to the peak of Eastern Emergence Mountain. Calls of welcome erupted from the alchemists close to him. "Congratulations, Furnace Lord Yi. Your rise to Violet Furnace Lord will bring a golden age to the East Pill Division. Furnace Lord Yi, as Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, your victory is merely a formality. I only fear the visiting sects will be curious about the details. Congratulations, Furnace Lord Yi." As voices rose from the crowd, Yi Feimu's pride faded. He smiled slightly and clasped hands. Regarding the title of Pill Cauldron, he hesitated, neither endorsing nor explaining it, which created tacit approval. While everyone was looking at Yi Feimu, Furnace Lord Yi Yunshin gave a hearty laugh. He stood and looked approvingly toward Yi Feimu. "Feimu, why don't you take out your pill furnace so everyone can see that you are qualified to be a Violet Furnace Lord?" Immediately, the eyes of the surrounding alchemists began to glow brightly. And Zehai's brow furrowed, but he didn't say anything. Yi Feimu took a breath, pride covering his face. He smacked his bag of holding to produce a pill furnace, the one from the world of the mother of furnaces. Once white, it was now violet, emitting a glow that reflected in the eyes of all observing cultivators. Yi Yunshin laughed loudly at the violet furnace, turned to Pill Demon, clasped hands and bowed deeply. "Congratulations, Master. This Violet Furnace Lord promotion has brought you a new apprentice and us a new junior brother. Feimu, why haven't you bowed to your new master?" Excitement flickered in Yi Feimu's eyes. He took a breath and began to walk forward when Zehai spoke. "Junior brother Yi, this is somewhat incongruous with protocol." The other Violet Furnace Lords' expressions flickered. The Furnace Lords' expressions changed. They could sense what was happening. Yi Yunshan's goal was obvious. The Furnace Lords didn't favor Fang Mu, most preferred Yi Feimu and watched with anticipation. Few ordinary master alchemists understood, though they sensed something. The experienced sub-patriarchs from other sects saw clearly. They had anticipated this development and were happy to watch it unfold. Fatty watched on wide-eyed. He glared at Yi Feimu and had long since begun to curse him inwardly. Pill Demon was the big exception. From the very beginning, he hadn't said a single word. It was as if he hadn't heard or seen anything that had transpired. As all eyes came to fall upon the scene, Yi Yunshan gave a slight smile. "Oh," he said, a strange note in his voice. "Elder brother and junior brother doesn't really understand what you mean. Would you mind clearing up my confusion?" "Yi Feimu wasn't the only person to step foot onto the peak of the mountain," replied Sohe calmly. Yi Yunshan laughed loudly. "Oh, so that's the protocol you were talking about, elder brother and junior brother would of course never overlook such a matter. However," he was only halfway finished speaking when suddenly a booming sound erupted from the screen depicting the world from the celestial land. When the booming sound appeared, it was obvious that it was coming from within the celestial land itself. The entire celestial land was shaking, and the nexus of it all was none other than Violet East Mountain. Immediately, all of the spectators looked over. Even Yi Yunshan's words were immediately drowned out by the boom. No one noticed, but Pill Demon's eyes suddenly emitted an unprecedented glow, and a smile slowly spread out across his face. It was a smile of satisfaction, filled with emotion and contentment. In Meng Hao's illusion, 3 more years passed in Eastern Emergence County. At 99 years old, he returned to his master's grave, his face filled with emotion. Heaven and earth are resting places for living creatures. Time is the passage of generations. A smile broke across his face. Life is a journey of ever-changing scenery. This path was his, marked by his choice. Whether shallow or deep mattered not. Perhaps my path hasn't arrived yet. He shook his head. Perhaps he'd discover his purpose in the future. For now, he didn't know and he wouldn't force a choice. When traveling, one never knows what might occur. That's what makes it beautiful. A carefree smile spread across Meng Hao's face. His white hair turned black, his crooked frame straightened, his ancient features filled with youthful vigor. He took a breath and dropped to his knees for a third kowtow. The kowtow of sunset gazing. With this kowtow, karma was finalized and the master and apprentice relationship solidified. If you do not sever the bond, neither shall I. Eastern Emergence County turned translucent behind him, then disappeared. The entire world began to disintegrate, leaving only the grave. A roaring filled heaven and earth. Everything fell apart. Meng Hao opened his eyes. The world vanished. He saw the sky again, the celestial land. He stood on the peak of Violet East Mountain. He looked into the distance and stepped forward. Ripples spread like water across his skin. His body melted away. When he reappeared, he stood on Eastern Emergence Mountain outside the pill furnace. His appearance garnered much attention, including a dark glare from Yi Feimu and a cold smile from Yi Yunshan. A silence fell. Yi Yunshan's voice echoed out. "I wasn't able to finish. Elder brother and 2 did step onto the peak. However, the decision isn't theirs to make but ours, you, me, the other Violet Furnace Lords and all Furnace Lords. We make the final decision. That is the protocol. Does this suffice?" Yi Yunshan smiled, and Sohe said nothing, merely flicking his sleeve. "According to sect protocol, because 2 stepped foot on the peak, we must decide. Whoever receives the most support becomes the Violet Furnace Lord. I am Violet Furnace Lord Yi Yunshan. I believe Yi Feimu is more qualified than Fang Mu, and I select Yi Feimu. Violet Furnace Lord Chen Xiang selects Yi Feimu. Violet Furnace Lord Shen Long selects Yi Feimu. Violet Furnace Lord Yuan Dayaming selects Yi Feimu. Violet Furnace Lord Ma Feifeng selects Yi Feimu. 5 Violet Furnace Lords had chosen Yi Feimu. Pride and excitement filled his face. Lin Heilong hesitated, looking at Meng Hao before deciding. The Violet Furnace Lord next to him, a middle-aged woman, showed indifference and didn't speak immediately. The disciples from other sects watched. The sub-patriarch smiled vaguely, silent. The Furnace Lords began to speak. Furnace Lord He Jin selects Yi Feimu. Furnace Lord Sun Zexuan selects Yi Feimu. More than half had selected Yi Feimu. And Sohe's face darkened. He was about to speak when Meng Hao's calm voice filled the air. "Violet Furnace Lord Yi, I would like to ask a question. Could you explain exactly why I, Fang Mu, am not as qualified as Furnace Lord Yi? Yi Yunchen replied impolitously, whether we discuss your skill in alchemy, reputation, or ability to create pills, you are less qualified than Yi Feimu. Moreover, Yi Feimu became famous 10 years ago and concocted a 90% consummate pill half a year ago. He is destined to become a violet furnace lord. You lack such qualifications. Qualifications. Meng Hao glanced at Yi Yunchen, then flung his sleeve. Medicinal pills flew out, 1, 10, 100, 1,000. More than 1,000 pills filled the air, each marked with a cauldron symbol like that branded into the bedevilment pill. An intense medicinal aroma filled the air like nothing anyone had encountered. Each pill contained 90% medicinal strength, 90% consummate pills. These were the highest value pills Meng Hao had concocted after the bedevilment pill. He had created many, hoping to sell them one at a time, but today he displayed them all for shocking effect. The pills floated midair. The cauldron symbol caused all alchemists' minds to spin. Chu Yuyan rose, disbelief on her face. The visiting sect disciples' minds reeled. Even the sub-patriarch stood, eyes wide with shock. The pills filled the air, their aroma thick as fog, rolling across Eastern Emergence Mountain's peak. Grass struggled upward. Dark clouds filled the sky. Thunder crackled across the entire state of Eastern Emergence. The pills began to mass together midair, slowly forming an enormous cauldron that gave rise to resplendent, boundless radiance. Meng Hao's cool voice rang out. If you add the fact that I'm Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, would you say I'm qualified enough? Chapter 292, Pill Cauldron Fang Mu. Over 1,000 medicinal pills swirled to form a cauldron. Medicinal aroma filled the area. Everyone breathed heavily, shocked by the sight. Everything fell silent. Lin Heilong shot to his feet, staring at Meng Hao, eyes glowing with unprecedented brightness. Next to him, and Zehai, who already knew the true identity of Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, couldn't help but be shocked by the sight of the cauldron formed from 90% consummate pills. The Violet Furnace Lords were gobsmacked. So many 90% consummate pills marked with a cauldron symbol clearly indicated Meng Hao's identity. No one would deny he was Pill Cauldron. No one else could have so many such pills. No one else could have created something from nothing in the third region. Seeing the Pill Cauldron floating in midair, everyone understood. Grandmaster Pill Cauldron was Fang Mu. Yunchen's face paled as he staggered back, panting. His eyes overflowed with disbelief. He had never anticipated Fang Mu could be Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. His prior speculations crumbled. Yunchen's mind spun. Grandmaster Pill Cauldron's name resounded throughout the southern domain, included among the 3 Grandmasters, even considered the 4th. Such an identity was a shocking slap across Yunchen's face. He thought about his words and Fang Mu's question about qualifications. His face burned with shame. If Grandmaster Pill Cauldron wasn't qualified, who was? Were the current Violet Furnace Lords? Yi Feimu's body shook, his face drained of blood, staring mutely at Meng Hao and the giant Pill Cauldron. His mind went blank. He had always known he was Pill Cauldron. As people speculated he was, he felt he should tell the truth but maintained silence. That identity helped propel him to Violet Furnace Lord. When Chu Yuyan asked, he gave implicit approval instead of denial. He held deep admiration for Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, which made him feel twisted about the deception. Now, learning that Fang Mu was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron stunned him completely. Chu Yuyan trembled, her mind spinning. This was impossible to accept. Her mental image of Grandmaster Pill Cauldron had never overlapped with Fang Mu. She believed Yi Feimu was Pill Cauldron. Now, facing the Pill Cauldron and Meng Hao's tranquility, her face filled with disbelief. She couldn't understand how the Fang Mu who had irritated her from day one was actually the Pill Cauldron she secretly esteemed. She could only stare awkwardly. The Furnace Lords who had supported Yi Feimu now showed disbelief. Grandmaster Pill Cauldron was far more important than their relationship with Yi Feimu. In the hearts of the East Pill Division's alchemists, Pill Cauldron was revered like Pill Demon himself. Though they had supported Yi Feimu, everything changed instantly. Fang Mu's words resonated through their minds like thunder. The Furnace Lords stared mutely, breathing heavily, faces filled with astonishment. Their minds buzzed with the same thought. Furnace Lord Fang Mu is Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. So many 90% consummate pills. Only Pill Cauldron could create these. Fang Mu really is Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. The outside sect cultivators showed incredulity on their faces. Patriarch Violet Civ stared in shock. He thought back to when Fang Mu had concocted pills for the sect. Now he understood why they'd been so effective. Fang Mu wasn't an ordinary furnace lord, he was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. Han Bei's mouth opened wide as if she couldn't breathe. She stared at Meng Hao. Grandmaster Pill Cauldron's reputation was immense, resounding like thunder, and Fang Mu had been Pill Cauldron all along. Fatty was panting, and his expression was one of intense admiration. The other visiting sect disciples simply stared, their minds shaking at Fang Mu's revelation. The sub-patriarchs stared thoughtfully, their eyes shining with understanding. They could imagine how Grandmaster Pill Cauldron's name would fill the entire southern domain after this day. Fang Mu would become nearly as illustrious as the sun itself. Violet Furnace Lord Yi, Meng Hao said coolly, staring at the pale-faced Yi Yunchen, is my status high enough? Yi Yunchen wanted to speak, but words stuck in his throat. How could he face Fang Mu now? I support Furnace Lord Fang Mu, Zhe said suddenly. Lin Heilong immediately echoed his words, followed by the middle-aged woman. The Violet Furnace Lords who had supported Yi Feimu sighed and voiced support for Fang Mu. Roughly 90% of the nearly 100 Furnace Lords echoed words of support. I support Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. I support Furnace Lord Fang Mu. Their voices echoed out, layer upon layer, transforming into a cacophony that filled the air. This chapter was sponsored by Darren Chen, Anonymous, Valera McDaniel, and Patrick Nguyen. Chapter 293, Legacy Apprentice. Yifemu smiled sadly at Meng Hao, his sense of loss reaching the ultimate level. To become a Violet Furnace Lord, he'd neglected cultivation and stubbornly pursued alchemy. He'd believed persistence alone would secure his place. Yi Yunchen had affirmed this. Even other Violet Furnace Lords had approved. Why did he show up? Why must the East Pill Division have both Yifemu and Fang Mu? With a bitter laugh, he staggered backward and coughed blood. He wasn't unconvinced. The instant he learned Fang Mu was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, he accepted it. He couldn't blame others for supporting Fang Mu. He could only laugh bitterly. He told himself that without his opponent's strength and Grandmaster status, he, at the peak of the East Pill Division Furnace Lords, would be second to none. He would have succeeded. Now he was defeated. He could imagine the scorn people would direct at him, not for his alchemy, but for the implication that he was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. He could only laugh bitterly, utterly disheartened. Blood seeped from his mouth. My Tao of Alchemy can't be defeated. 1 or 2 losses I can accept, but repeated failure destroys the Tao of Alchemy. No, what is defeated is not my Tao of Alchemy but myself. He wiped the blood away, his eyes shining with determination. My Tao of Alchemy will never be defeated. It is unprecedented, unique, original to heaven and earth. This is my great Tao of Alchemy. His breathing was ragged as he looked at Meng Hao. Chu Yuyan said nothing, suppressing her mind's trembling as she stared at Meng Hao. Unparalleled bitterness rose in her heart. She'd been defeated from the moment she entered the celestial land. Without Fang Mu or Yifemu, she would have become Violet Furnace Lord. She wanted to prove herself, but now there was no chance. Only one alchemist could become Violet Furnace Lord. Missed this opportunity, and no matter what achievements followed, only regret remained. There was never a second chance. Just like my Tao of Alchemy seeking that missing spark of life, today that spark has vanished, with no way to find it again. Blood seeped from her mouth. Her pain was for the Tao of Alchemy. Everyone fell silent. Yi Yunchen looked agonized. Yifemu's path seemed over, his future a grave. The surrounding cultivators observed with various thoughts. Each had their own concept of the Tao of Alchemy. Each understood stubbornness differently. Each had their own path. It wasn't easy to compare. What was defeated wasn't just an individual but a Tao of Alchemy. Without endurance, collapse was inevitable. A light sigh filled the silence. Grandmaster Pill Demon slowly rose to his feet, his gaze sweeping over the alchemists. Everyone lowered their heads in respect. His eyes came to rest on Yifemu. The Tao of Alchemy is invincible. More invincible still is the determination to cultivate it. If that determination exists, even after 10,000 defeats, your Tao of Alchemy remains. You have done well. Since you joined the sect, you have pursued your own path. Your path is winding, filled with thorns and thistles. Only with determination can you face defeat and proceed onward. Walk such a path and it becomes invincible. Fear not defeat. Fear giving up. Yifemu's body trembled. He clasped hands and bowed deeply. Many thanks for your enlightenment, Patriarch. You shall be a Violet Furnace Lord, Pill Demon said. From this day forth you are my novitiate. Ifemu trembled, excitement filling his face. This was his dream, finally realized. To become a violet furnace lord had been his most important pursuit for years. The alchemists watched, their minds reeling. Pill Demon's gaze next fell upon Chu Yuyan. You have searched for a Tao of alchemy that embraces life. You wish to find a spark of life that doesn't exist. It is exceedingly hard to reach the peak of such a path. It is not winding but very difficult. Sometimes there is no spark of life. What will you do then? Your path lies not in pill concoction but in refinement of the heart. You have always been my apprentice, but unlike the others, you are my personal apprentice. You shall become a violet furnace lord. Tears streamed down Chu Yuyan's face. She immediately bowed low to Pill Demon. The alchemists fell silent. The violet furnace lords wanted to speak but held their tongues. Lin Hailong hesitated. As the most senior violet furnace lord, he braced himself and opened his mouth. Master, according to trial by fire custom, only one can be selected. Since Eternal Mountain left, you've made no progress in your Tao of alchemy. You haven't moved since that year. Do you know why? Pill Demon calmly looked at Lin Hailong. I haven't told you because I wanted you to realize it, but you still don't understand. Is custom really that important? Lin Hailong smiled awkwardly. But the custom was begun by you, master. Since I began it, I can change it. Let it be so. He flicked his sleeve, turning to look at Meng Hao. Lin Hailong sighed with relief and stepped backward. He'd spoken because outsiders were observing the ceremonies. As the most senior violet furnace lord, he was required to say something, even indirectly. Pill Demon looked at Meng Hao. Using the body as the pill furnace and the heart as the pill formula, refining the sun and moon, refining the ancientness of the stars. Such a Tao of alchemy. He paused. Master looks forward to your future path. A smile broke across his face. The onlookers noticed something different. Pill Demon was calling himself master. Violet furnace lords become my novitiates with 1 Tao. Since you are Pill Cauldron, you become my personal apprentice with 2. However, I already accepted a hefty apprentice's fee from you, so from today I have a second legacy apprentice. Now, kowtow before me 3 times. He smiled at Meng Hao, kindness in his eyes like the master from his illusion. Meng Hao's expression turned strange. The words apprentice's fee made him recall his 200 million spirit stones. Pill Demon raised his right hand and flicked his sleeve. Ripples appeared, surrounding Meng Hao and disappearing into his body. Hailong, said Pill Demon, please assist Master in receiving the friends from other sects. Announce to the southern domain that I have accepted Fang Mu as my legacy apprentice. Everyone stood and clasped hands toward the heavens. Lin Hailong trembled when he heard, his vision resting on Meng Hao. The other violet furnace lords knew what a legacy apprentice was. Envy shone in Han Bei's eyes. She understood that Fang Mu would be different from everyone else in the southern domain. Fatty sighed inwardly. The oldest brother was the most awesome, having become Pill Demon's legacy apprentice. There are 3 levels of apprentices: novitiate, personal apprentice, and legacy apprentice. Novitiates receive simple advice but may ask questions. Personal apprentices follow the master and receive instruction verbally and by example, including secret techniques. Legacy apprentices are most important. They receive a lifetime of knowledge, the hope of passing on everything. Nothing is held back. Such an apprentice is more important than a son. \\\\asterisk. In the deepest corner of the Violet Fate Sect's East Pill Division stood a squat mountain. The surrounding mountains were much higher, yet this mountain emanated profound dignity as if it were the most senior. It was the pinnacle of all the East Pill Division's mountains. A building stood on this peak. Pill Demon led Meng Hao to it. Meng Hao gasped. It looked exactly like his master's house from the world of illusion. Pill Demon pushed the door open and walked inside, back facing Meng Hao. You experienced the kowtow of innocence. You walked the kowtow of roaming. You chose to perform the kowtow of sunset gazing. With these 3 kowtows, you took me as master. Meng Hao followed, watching the old man. Suddenly, he realized this man wasn't a stranger. His life in the world of illusions was overlapping with reality. Meng Hao clasped hands and bowed deeply. Apprentice greets Master. In the celestial land, Master told you that you need perform only 2 kowtows. The first was broken into 3 parts. Master has sown karma and you did not break it, so neither shall I. As for the second kowtow, I didn't explain it then. Now you must understand. The second kowtow comes if the day arrives when I return to dust. Then you must kowtow to break our karma, so our fates are no longer intertwined. I will give you a lifetime of favor. All you must give me is the ability to smile before I die, knowing my legacy will be passed on. If you choose the path of my first legacy apprentice, Liu Rufeng, and leave me, there will be no need for the second kowtow. Your feet are your own and the path is beneath your feet. The choice is yours to make. Pill Demon turned to look at Meng Hao. However, if I am unable to dispel the poison of the resurrection lily, would you still be willing to take me as your master? This chapter was sponsored by DP, Michael Wu, Hui Liangan, and Eric Lane. Chapter 294, Complete Legacy. Meng Hao looked at his master silently, then spoke quietly. At first, I came to rid myself of the poison. After I joined the sect, I stayed for the Tao of Alchemy. Pill Demon gazed at him for a long moment. Contentment appeared on his face, and he smiled. He said, "From your first day in the sect, I felt the resurrection lily's aura. 3 ways exist to dispel the poison. 1. It merges with you and you are no longer you. 2. You devour it and it is no longer it. 3. You use your Tao of Alchemy to dispel it yourself. Karma exists within heaven and earth. The resurrection lily is the karma's cause. Only you can dispel it because only you are you. This is the karma's result. The first is passive, the second active, the third most active, using your Tao of Alchemy. You understand my meaning." Meng Hao fell silent. The poison had pestered him since the state of Zhao. When he joined the sect, he'd had no understanding of alchemy. Through constant cultivation, he'd gained enlightenment and hope. Master's words caused him to sigh inwardly. "This poison is nothing," Pill Demon said. "With your skill in alchemy, you'll dispel it eventually. Master can see the resurrection lily has been suppressed. Strange. Right now it's as if asleep. However, the power of suppression seems gradually weakening." Meng Hao's eyes glittered. "Master, in your experience, has anyone successfully dispelled the poison themselves?" "One person," Pill Demon replied. "He lived by the Milky Way Sea named Reverend Silverlamp. His cultivation base was unfathomable. He came 700 years ago seeking a method. I told him the same thing. 300 years later he returned. He had successfully dispelled the poison." Meng Hao smiled slightly. "If that person could dispel it, I will too." Pill Demon's voice lowered, his expression somber. "If I forcefully helped you, it would harm the karma cycle, not benefiting you. However, under my tutelage, your Tao of Alchemy will reach the point where you can dispel it yourself. The poison gave you natural talent. If you dispel it, you can assimilate its full power, turning one of heaven's ultimate poisons into a rarely seen treasure. Such a treasure opens your path to the heavens. Though the poison seems a disaster, it brings unprecedented good fortune." He changed the subject. "After the 3 kowtows, you became my legacy apprentice. Master has 3 gifts for you." He raised his arm and flicked his sleeve. Colors swirled around them. "The first gift is a batch of Outlander pills. The name comes from a Knight of Outlandish Tales. Such a pill has never appeared in the southern domain. I created it during alchemic enlightenment 3 years ago. This batch contains 3 pills. Each pill causes the resurrection lily to slumber 100 years, increases longevity 100 years, and aids cultivation progress, breaking through any blockage. These 3 pills help you reach the nascent soul stage with no problems and give you 300 years to dispel the poison. If you haven't succeeded, I'll concoct another batch and continue until you succeed." Meng Hao felt the sincerity, kindness, and love in his master's words. 3 years ago, Pill Demon had concocted pills during alchemic enlightenment just for him. Meng Hao clasped hands and bowed deeply. "Many thanks, Master. My second gift is a legacy technique, the spirit summoning incantation. It refines pills up to 6 times, though sufficient talent can exceed this limit. This is a legacy technique I've only passed to 2 people, you and your elder brother Liu Rufeng." Pill Demon reached up and pushed down onto Meng Hao's forehead. Meng Hao's body trembled, an icy coldness sweeping through him. A passage of text appeared in his mind, abstruse and profound, but he gained complete enlightenment from it. "This legacy technique may only be passed to a legacy apprentice. No complicated process. Master the fundamentals and use it. Later, pass it to another, and so it continues." A profound look gleamed in Pill Demon's eyes. "My last gift is the East Pill Ever-Burning Flame." He flicked his right sleeve. The mountainside split open, a massive fissure appearing. Steps descended into the depths. Master and apprentice walked downward for a long time. Deep in the earth beneath the sect, Meng Hao looked ahead. An enormous limestone cavern lay before him. 3 enormous, half-burned black joss sticks filled the cavern. Black smoke swirled about. Greenish flames burned everywhere. Above the joss sticks floated a black pill furnace. approximately 3 meters tall, supported by smoke and fueled by flames. Pill Demon looked at it, his eyes shining with memory before he sighed lightly. This incense is not of this world. The smoke never disperses, the incense never ceases burning. This is the East Pill Division's ever-burning flame, burning for more than 20,000 years. It is a legacy that cannot be extinguished. Instill it into your heart and it becomes an alchemic flame. After you reach core formation, fuse this flame into your violet core, and it ignites. Thereafter, you need not use earthly fire for pill concoction. This is your personal alchemic fire to refine all objects in heaven and earth. In the entire East Pill Division, only you and I are qualified to use this legacy fire. The ever-burning flame is always here, as AMI Pill Demon murmured, staring at the joss sticks, smoke and flame as if not speaking to Meng Hao. After a moment he looked at Meng Hao. Stay here in secluded meditation. When you assimilate the will of the fire into your heart, you may emerge. He turned and slowly strode up the stairs, disappearing. Meng Hao thought for a long time, then sat down cross-legged. He looked at the pill bottle in his hand, the outlander pills his master had concocted. The pills were incredibly precious. He put the bottle into his bag of holding and closed his eyes. Within his mind floated the spirit summoning incantation with techniques to refine a pill 3, 4, even 6 times. An ordinary pill could transform into a consummate pill. The technique's power shook Meng Hao's mind. This was a divine ability of alchemy, congruous to the sublime spirit scripture. With this technique, Meng Hao was a grandmaster of pill concoction. Only the East Pill Division's ever-burning flame could sustain the technique past the 4th refinement. Only Pill Demon and Meng Hao could use the ever-burning flame and employ the 4th refinement. Meng Hao took a breath and opened his eyes. Now he understood why Master instructed him to assimilate the flame into his heart. This is a complete legacy, he thought, looking at the joss sticks, smoke, and greenish inextinguishable flames. The flame and technique complement each other. Without either, reaching the pinnacle is impossible. 3 months passed. Meng Hao never left the cavern. The promotion of 3 violet furnace lords caused a shocking commotion throughout the southern domain. Many said this was the most incredible of the past 10. Other sects spread word of Chu Yuyan's alchemy and skill. She fully deserved to become Violet Furnace Lord. Her name spread throughout the great sects as Violet Furnace Lord Chu Yuyan. Yifeimu stirred even more excitement. His Tao of alchemy was stunning and invincible. The story of how he concocted one pill creating 10,000 stairs spread across the southern domain. Already famous, his ascension to Violet Furnace Lord made him a pillar of the Violet Fate sect. Most shocking was Fang Mu. He was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, legacy apprentice of Pill Demon. He had risen to prominence slaying a Black Lands core formation cultivator. Fang Mu became the most talked about person in the entire southern domain. More viewed him as the 4th Grandmaster. Word of his enormous pill cauldron formed from 1,000 medicinal pills top Eastern Emergence Mountain spread everywhere. The story stirred blood and brought him even more acclaim. In the East Pill Division, Fang Mu was second only to Pill Demon. All cultivators recognized this. Many considered Meng Hao the Tao Child of the East Pill Division, equal or superior in reputation to the sect's Tao Child. A great change occurred to the corpse that had fallen from the sky. Magical symbols appeared on its skin, floating out to create refracted reflections. They recognized it as one of the 3 classic scriptures, the Tao Divinity Scripture. The Sublime Spirit Scripture, Tao Divinity Scripture, and Heaven Severing Scripture are 3 classic scriptures capable of arousing terrifying peril. People from the western desert and eastern lands employed shocking methods to teleport to the southern domain. The force preventing people from nearing the corpse vanished. The mountain-sized corpse was now approachable. The solitary sword sect paid a price acquiring a hair from the corpse's head, refining it into a precious treasure that could shock heaven and earth. Grandmaster Eternal Mountain acquired a blood sample, concocting a pill that was almost a celestial pill. Word spread, throwing the southern domain into commotion. More sects and clans dispatched forces to the Immortal's corpse. Shrill calls emerged from the rebirth cave, turning into roars. A black wind swept around the corpse's area. Countless dying cultivators had entered the rebirth cave, hoping for rebirth. No one knew if they lived or died. Based on legends, the rebirth cave had become one of the 3 danger zones like the ancient Temple of Doom. After more than 10 years of corpse investigation, the bizarre life force within the cave began moving, revealing its avaricious will. Storm clouds roiled over the southern domain. This chapter was sponsored by Alan Tam. Chapter 295, Green Mark. As news of the Immortals Corp spread, the Violet Fate sect paid closer attention. Chosen from the Violet Chi division and a sect elder were dispatched. Other great sects and clans also sent forces. More southern domain cultivators gathered at the Rebirth Cave, seeking good fortune. The events attracted the Western Desert. Years ago, when the corpse fell, Western Desert cultivators had investigated. Now, with new rumors, large numbers appeared again. Even the Eastern lands sent cultivators. Eventually, the cultivators gathering around the Rebirth Cave and the Immortals Corpse found out something very bizarre. The cultivation base of any nascent soul cultivator who approached the corpse would be severely suppressed. If they continued to push forward, it would eventually be pushed down to the core formation stage. Core formation cultivators, on the other hand, experienced no hindrances whatsoever. Even more bizarre was that any cultivator who touched the corpse, which resembled something like a small mountain, would immediately disappear, teleported away. Most would be teleported back into the area a short while later. When recounting their experience, everyone described things differently. One person saw a river, another saw buildings, palaces, and temples. One caught sight of precious treasures but was unable to acquire them. Another described seeing celestial pills, and one person, pill formulas carved onto stone walls. Even more far-fetched was someone who claimed to have seen a battlefield, deep in the middle of which was a coffin. There were all sorts of descriptions, none exactly alike. All of this made the Immortals Corpse even more fantastic, and caused it to attract even more people to come investigate. In a period of a few months, the Violet Fate sect had already dispatched 5 groups of people. Starting with the 4th group, it wasn't just the Violet Chi division who went, but also alchemists from the East Pill division. This was because the cultivator who had seen pill formulas was none other than a Violet Chi division disciple. After returning and telling his tale, it only took a few days for the East Pill division to include alchemists with the 4th group dispatched. The leaders of this particular group was none other than Yi Famo and Sohe and Yi Yunshan. 3 Violet Furnace Lords emerged simultaneously, along with experts from the Violet Chi division. This was the 4th wave sent to enter the region of the Immortals Corpse. A month passed, and more bizarre events occurred. The various sects and clans continued to dispatch more people. Now, even eccentrics of the patriarch level appeared. It was at this time that the Violet Fate sect began organizing the 5th group of people to travel to the Rebirth Cave. By this time, Meng Hao had been in secluded meditation for half a year. It was 3 days after the 5th group left, led by Chu Yuyan and Lin Heilong, that he finally emerged. When he walked out from the subterranean cavern, his body was somewhat weak. However, his eyes were filled with profundity much deeper than before. There was no evidence on him that he possessed the ever-burning flame. However, if you looked deep into his eyes, you couldn't help but think that there was some massive conflagration deep therein. Meng Hao had already melded the East Pill ever-burning flame into his mind and heart. Once he broke through from Foundation establishment and formed a violet core, then he could transform it and cause the ever-burning flame to ignite and never be extinguished. After emerging from meditation, Meng Hao could immediately sense the storm winds which flitted about the sect. After some inquiries, he learned about the phenomena regarding the Immortals Corpse which had begun half a year previous. Meng Hao knew more about the Immortals Corpse than most. He had the feeling it fell searching for him, which made him hesitate to approach it. Hearing the stories, Meng Hao thought about the matter quietly. He visited his master, then decided to enter secluded meditation to concoct a 3 mortalities pill and break through to core formation. Meng Hao was in the great circle of Foundation establishment. His path led to core formation. Then he could cultivate core chi and rise to prominence. Core formation cultivators would have to be careful. Many paths would open. Core formation marks true cultivation. Breathing exercises prepare for core formation, just the beginning. Foundation establishment lays a foundation. Solidity increases core formation power. Core formation is the first true explosive power on the path of cultivation. Core formation cultivators can use core chi to make magical techniques reach the pinnacle of power. Beyond that pinnacle, such techniques become divine abilities. Divine abilities are techniques that really only nascent soul cultivators can master. Charge through to core formation, thought Meng Hao. His eyes gleamed with stubbornness as he sat cross-legged in his Immortals cave. He waved his right sleeve, and a black pill furnace materialized. As soon as it did, the face of a youth appeared on its surface. It stared hatefully at Meng Hao, its eyes filled with venomous hatred as it screamed a noiseless scream. It was still filled with rage, because Meng Hao had taken it out from the world of the mother of furnaces. Meng Hao eyed the materialized youth on the surface of the black pill furnace. Then, he snorted coldly. The spirit of the pill furnace was unable to tell the difference between good and bad. Whenever Meng Hao used it to concoct pills, it was always filled with resentment. Since it seems you are seeking to die, I'll help you to understand what it means to live a life worse than death. It won't be long before you're pleading with me to help you. With that, he grabbed the black pill furnace, and ignoring the fear struggling on the face of the youth, as well as the noiseless screaming, he directly placed it into the blood-colored mask. Elder Ultimate Vexation, this is the spirit I spoke of a while ago. I joined this sect just to capture this bully. May I prevail upon you to convert it. The meat jelly was currently perched atop a listless, ingratiating Li clan patriarch, leaning over and looking down at him. When it heard Meng Hao's words, it began to tremble, and its eyes shone with a brilliant light. Filled with excitement, it immediately looked at the black pill furnace which Meng Hao had delivered to it. "Fear not," said the meat jelly with a smile. "You may be immoral, you may be incorrect, but you can rest at ease. The great, handsome, kind-hearted ultimate vexation will help bring you back from the path of wickedness." It hopped over next to the black pill furnace. Meng Hao retracted his spiritual sense, ignoring the spirit of the furnace. Instead, he pulled out the 10,000 refinements furnace and some medicinal herbs. After a moment's thought, he devoted himself fully to pill concoction. He would concoct the 3 mortalities pill, which was required to be able to break through from foundation establishment to core formation. The diligence with which Meng Hao focused on concocting the medicinal pill he needed for his breakthrough does not need to be described in detail. He took a full half a month, which, considering it didn't involve alchemic enlightenment, was actually quite a long time for him, something that didn't happen very often. Half a month later, he looked down at the 3 mortalities pill in his palm and took a deep breath. Then, he started to duplicate it. Early in the morning of the next day, Meng Hao unhesitatingly consumed a 3 mortalities pill and began to circulate the power of violet qi from the east in an attempt to form a violet core. Days passed. Meng Hao lost track of how many 3 mortalities pills he consumed. He had never imagined that using the 10 Tao pillars of the perfect foundation to form a violet core would be such a difficult process. A month went by, and Meng Hao was completely immersed in using the 3 mortalities pill to reach core formation. However, after a month of attempts, he had not succeeded. He was only a bit away, but no matter what he did, the only thing he could do was produce violet qi. Every time he tried to form it into a core, he failed. Failure after failure caused Meng Hao to begin to regret having borrowed such a vast amount of spirit stones from the sect after becoming a violet furnace lord. Watching them flow away like water caused him intense pain. However, there was nothing he could do about it. Based on this rate of success, could my chances of success with 10 Tao pillars really be 1 in 1,000? Meng Hao sighed. That thought was quite frightening. Without the copper mirror, his cultivation base would never be able to progress beyond foundation establishment. He sat thinking for a while, his brow furrowed, considering Li Dai and the others, and their breakthrough at the Tao Geyser. "It must have something to do with my 10 Tao pillars," sighed Meng Hao. He didn't completely give up. Based on his speculation just now, even if he only had a 1 in 1,000 chance, that meant there was still hope. The first step is to form a violet core. Then after I concoct the perfect gold core pill, I can form a gold core. For me, the core formation stage will involve a huge jump in power. Once I'm at core formation, I can wear the blood-colored mask and employ the Blood Immortal's divine abilities. Also, according to what the meat jelly said, after I reach core formation, the parrot will appear. Meng Hao's eyes filled with determination as he thought these things. I must form a violet core. He flicked his sleeve and was about to go borrow some more spirit stones when, suddenly, his entire body trembled. It wasn't just him that was shaking, it was everything around him. More than half of the southern domain was vibrating, and the center of it all was none other than the Immortal's corpse, where nearly 100,000 cultivators had gathered in the vicinity of the Rebirth Cave. The vibration came from the chest of the corpse as if its heart were beating. It emanated out in all directions, rocking the earth, sending out ripples through the land. As it spread, it touched mountaintops, sweeping through one sect after another. The location of the violet sect fate was not incredibly far away, so it was also affected. Many people heard it and their hearts shook. Meng Hao suddenly paused, lifting his hand up to feel his chest. He could feel the vibrations which filled everything. Suddenly, his expression changed, because at that moment he realized that to him, the vibration sounded like a beckoning. In his estimation, it was a beckoning that came from none other than the immortal's corpse, which he had been trying so hard to avoid. Filling the beckoning was an archaic voice that sounded directly into Meng Hao's mind. You, I know your bloodline, I know where you're from. You, do you want to know why you could see me in that other world all those years ago? You, do you want to know what world that was? I came here for you and I've been waiting a long time. Come to me here. You will know the truth about everything. The voice sounded ancient, as if it were floating through countless years of time, filled with ancient qi. As it echoed within Meng Hao's mind, it caused his blood vessels to surge. Blood pumped rapidly through his body. Suddenly, on the back of his right hand, a greenish mark appeared. 1. This mark first appeared on Meng Hao's hand when he reached Foundation Establishment in Chapter 100. This chapter was sponsored by Alan Tam. Chapter 296, Another Encounter with Jade. The mark looked like a magical symbol. It didn't exist on top of his skin, but rather inside his flesh. Meng Hao was not unfamiliar with it. The moment he had reached Foundation Establishment, he had seen this exact same mark. Today was the second time. Meng Hao looked at the mark, his mind buzzing. After a long time, the shaking disappeared. The strange sign which had filled half of the southern domain caused even more attention to be drawn to the immortal's corpse. Meng Hao stood there within his immortal's cave for a long time before he lifted his head. His eyes were now filled with a sharp light. Just who is he? Why was I able to see him that year? Why did he fall into the southern domain? And why is he able to affect my blood flow and give rise to this mark? Was the mark placed upon me by him that year? Or was it part of me all along, there within my flesh from the beginning? Meng Hao silently thought about the night his father and mother went missing, and the violet wind which had blown outside. If Meng Hao remembered correctly, when that wind arose, it had swirled around his body. He remembered that it was no ordinary wind, but that it contained some type of power. Meng Hao thought for a long time, all the way until it was dark outside. A bright light began to shine in his eyes, as well as resolve. Regardless of whether this person's words are true or false, I'm going. Determination gleamed in his eyes. Great reward only comes by taking risks. Cultivators cultivate self-confidence. When a decision has been made, it must be pursued with determination and without the slightest thought of wavering. He flicked his right sleeve as he walked out of the immortal's cave. Several days later, the sixth group of cultivators left the Violet Fate Sect. It consisted of 30 people who transformed into 30 prismatic beams that shot off into the air. In front of this group was none other than Meng Hao. He wore the robe of a violet furnace lord, and his long hair whipped about behind him as he shot forward. All of the people behind him looked at him with expressions of veneration, regardless of whether they were from Violet Chi Division or the East Pill Division. Together, they shot off into the distance at top speed. Meng Hao was quiet during the entire trip. He didn't speak. Within his mind spun the echoing beckons of the immortal's corpse. This sixth group of Violet Fate Sect cultivators teleported 3 times and spent half a month before arriving in the vicinity of the Rebirth Cave. Once more during that time period, the vibration echoed out. When the vibration hit them, everyone dropped to the ground, where they sat cross-legged. Only Meng Hao floated in midair, looking off into the distance. Once again, he felt the beckoning. Come to me, I'm here, waiting for you, all the truth, all the answers. Meng Hao's mind spun. Of the hundreds of thousands of cultivators in the region of the Rebirth Cave, the voice within the beckons could only be heard by Meng Hao. His eyes glittered even more relentlessly than before. There are 3 danger zones in the southern domain: the primordial Tao Lakes, the ancient Temple of Doom, and finally, the Rebirth Cave. At a glance, it looked like an enormous depression in the ground. Multitudinous volcanoes could be seen in the area, so many that they were impossible to count. They seemed to never end. What was visible was the black sky, and the thick black fog that covered everything. This was the region of the Rebirth Cave. According to the legends, people who were nearing death could enter the Rebirth Cave at the right moment, and if they succeeded, could get a chance to live another life. Whether this was true or false, since ancient times, many almighty cultivators, unwilling to pass into death, had entered the Rebirth Cave. Throughout the countless years, only 3 people had ever emerged successfully. Without exception, after leaving the Rebirth Cave, those three people never once talked about what had happened inside. Eventually, they had disappeared, never to be heard from again. Despite that, the legends regarding the mysteries of the rebirth cave continued to grow more and more exaggerated. Regardless of anything, stories about the rebirth cave had been circulating for tens of thousands of years, which was sufficient to show that it had some astonishing properties. Meng Hao understood that by proceeding forward, he would be entering the region of the rebirth cave. Upon entering, the level of danger would be extreme. As for the immortal's corpse, it had fallen directly in front of the rebirth cave, no more than 50 kilometers away. Currently, the vibrations were slowly fading away. As they did, one figure after another shot up from the ground into the air. Currently, hundreds of thousands of cultivators from all over the southern domain were gathered in a 1,000-kilometer radius of the rebirth cave, forming a perimeter around it. In this area, the cultivators had established temporary strongholds representing the various sects and clans. Every stronghold contained members of the elder generation of the various sects. It seemed that every day more people from a variety of sects entered this huge region. Many would face the danger and approach the corpse, hoping to see some good fortune. Some came back, some never did. Because of the accumulation of so many hundreds of thousands of cultivators, it was impossible to avoid the eruption of various feuds. Therefore, magical battle was not uncommon, and every day at least a few people were killed. As for the great sects and clans, they were under the protection of the elder generation. There was a bit of chaos, but it was kept under relative control. After the vibration faded, Meng Hao led dozens of Violet Fate sect cultivators into the area, attracting attention. That's Fang Mu from the Violet Fate sect. That's the Dao child of the East Pill division, Fang Mu. Meng Hao's expression remained the same. He led his group toward the rebirth cave. As they flew along, he scanned the area with spiritual sense. He could immediately sense a vast amount of cultivators there. There weren't as many as outside the inner perimeter, perhaps only around 10,000. Compared to the area outside, inside the perimeter, the fog was denser, thicker, exerting pressure on spiritual sense and making it more difficult to hear and see. Eventually, Meng Hao caught sight of an enormous basin. Hovering in midair above the basin was a roiling black fog that rose up high into the sky. Beneath the fog, the basin had a perimeter of about 500 kilometers. It was enormous, and within that enormity was the southern domain's mysterious rebirth cave. This was the nucleus of the rebirth cave. Surrounding this nucleus were a dozen or so pillars of light which rose up into the sky. Each and every pillar undulated shockingly, making it impossible for anyone to not notice them. They embodied shocking power. The existence of these more than 10 pillars of light made the huge area surrounding the rebirth cave seem a bit less dangerous. Many of the strange creatures that lived in the area hid away and would not emerge to harm people. Each one among the dozen or so pillars of light was fixed at a stationary point. There, large groups of cultivators sat cross-legged, meditating. Only the 5 great sects and 3 great clans were capable of creating strongholds like this near the nucleus of the rebirth cave region. As Meng Hao approached, he immediately caught sight of one of the pillars of light that was violet-colored and emanated an oppressive, pressure-filled energy. Because of this violet pillar of light, not a scrap of black fog could be seen anywhere nearby. Even the ground was a violet color because of it. Wu Dinkyu was there inside, as well as Chu Yuyan and Zeihai, Lin Heilong, and the other cultivators from the Violet Qi division. There were roughly 100 people, all sitting cross-legged, eyes closed in meditation. Included in the number were 2 old people, meditating cross-legged in the very center of the glowing pillar. They wore long, white robes, and their countenances were ancient. Meng Hao could sense a fearsome pressure contained within their bodies. Wu Dinkyu was obviously much weaker than these 2 old people, by about an entire stage. Spirit-severing stage. Meng Hao took a deep breath. As he continued toward them, his eyes flickered about, glancing toward the other pillars of light. He saw the solitary sword sect, the black sieve sect, the golden frost sect, the blood demon sect, as well as cultivators from the 3 great clans including Han Bei, Chen Fan, Zhou Jai, Wang Lihai, Li Dei, and others. 2. Okay, here's a quick refresher. Han Bei, sexy schemer. Chen Fan, protective, talkative brother. Zhou Jai, possessed Dao child. Wang Lihai, brother of Wang Tengfei. Li Dei, fought Meng Hao in the blood immortal legacy. Meng Hao's gaze finally came to fall upon a white-robed woman in the black sieve sect group. Su Cheng. He stared at her for a moment and then looked away. There were other pillars of light. One was orange-colored and filled with an air of potency and dignity. Sitting cross-legged within were a few dozen cultivators upon whose skin were tattooed depictions of various totems. They were tall and did not look like people from the southern domain. Western desert cultivators, thought Meng Hao, his eyes narrowing. This wasn't his first time seeing cultivators from the western desert. The first time he'd arrived in the center of the southern domain, he'd seen these strange, tall cultivators. Meng Hao also knew that the actual name of the western desert was the Barbarian West. In fact, that was the name that was written on the map he'd seen years ago. However, the people from the western desert felt that the word barbarian was too belittling, and therefore took up the name Western Desert. At one time that had corresponded with the original name of the northern reaches, which had long ago been called the Northern Desert. Despite this, there were still people who called them Western Devils. As he proceeded onward, Meng Hao's gaze fell upon two other pillars of light. One of them glowed with a light as blue as the sky. Next to it, a large flagpole had been stabbed into the ground. Floating in the wind was a flag embroidered in gold with the character Jade. When he saw it, Meng Hao's pupils constricted and he began to breathe heavily. There were over 10 cultivators sitting beneath the pillar of light, meditating. One of them was a young man with thin lips, a lofty air, and impatience written on his face. He seemed to have sensed Meng Hao's gaze. He turned and looked over, then gave a cold snort. Contempt flickered within his eyes. The cold snort immediately entered Meng Hao's mind, causing him to pause momentarily. He quickly rotated his cultivation base to disperse the uneasy feeling. Core formation stage. His expression was the same as usual as he looked away. The young man's eyes flashed as he examined Meng Hao for a moment and then ignored him. Meng Hao next looked at the other beam of light, which was a greenish color and emanated terrifying power. The black Civ Sex pillar was also greenish, but this color was different, deeper. Beneath the green pillar, 3 people sat cross-legged. One was a middle-aged woman, another was an old person, and the third was a young woman. The young woman wore a green robe, and her long hair cascaded down over her shoulders. She was rather beautiful, but she also possessed a cold, proud air. She seemed to be the kind of person that had a short temper and wasn't easy to approach. As he looked over everyone, Meng Hao stayed calm and collected. He led his group directly toward the violet Fate Sect's violet pillar of light, and as he neared, quite a few people opened their eyes vigilantly. When they saw Meng Hao, expressions of respect filled their faces. As for Chu Yuyan, a complicated look appeared in her eyes. Yifeimu simply lowered his head silently. Wu Dinkyu was the guy who made the bet with eccentric song about the spear. He was also present when Grandmaster Eternal Mountain visited the Violet Fate Sect, and Meng Hao competed against Fatioke. Here's a quick refresher. Han Bei, sexy schemer. Chen Fan, protective talkative brother. Zhou Jai, possessed Dao child. Wang Lihai, brother of Wang Tengfei. Li Dai fought Meng Hao in the Blood Immortal Legacy. Chapter 297, still somewhat pleased with himself. Wu Dinkyu opened his eyes and smiled at Meng Hao. His treatment of a Foundation establishment cultivator showed Meng Hao's position in the sect. Meng Hao even exceeded Wu Dinkyu. If his cultivation base were higher, Wu Dinkyu would rise. Meng Hao had been a part of the cultivation world for years now, and knew that the best way to conduct oneself was without arrogance. He immediately clasped hands and bowed to Wu Dinkyu, which of course caused the man's smile to grow even wider. Meng Hao's cultivation base was weak, but his position was high. Because of his lack of arrogance, it caused Wu Dinkyu's favorable impression of him to grow even stronger. Smiling, he said, "Grandmaster Fang, allow me to introduce you to these 2 patriarchs." This was a situation of giving a plum in exchange for a peach. Meng Hao also smiled. Having been introduced by Wu Dinkyu, Meng Hao clasped hands and bowed deeply to the 2 ancient-looking patriarchs within the violet pillar of light. Junior Fang Mu of the East Pill Division pays respects to the 2 patriarchs. Sitting there cross-legged within the violet pillar of light, their faces covered with wrinkles, they seemed the very picture of intense power. As Meng Hao bowed to them, they opened their eyes slowly, looking him over, their vision filled with obstruseness. They seemed to be committing Meng Hao's aura to memory. "Your cultivation base isn't sufficient," said one of them coolly, his eyes closed. "To the greatest extent possible, do not venture outside. Stay here and you'll be fine." The other patriarch smiled at Meng Hao, eyes filled with praise. Meng Hao knew that their goodwill was all because of his master. After Meng Hao paid his respects to the patriarchs, Wu Dinkyu led him to greet more cultivators from the Violet Qi division. All of them treated Meng Hao with utmost politeness. Be it with their words or the way they carried themselves, they showed complete respect. Even the core formation cultivators were very respectful to him. Wu Dinkyu introduced Meng Hao to the Violet Qi Division cultivators, but as for the East Pill Division disciples, no introductions were needed. One by one, they approached Meng Hao to offer him their respects. When Meng Hao approached Lin Heilong and Zehai and the others, it was noticed by the forces from other sects in the area. Many gazes fell upon them, most of which lingered on Meng Hao. The expressions of the onlookers instantly changed into shock. Clearly most of them had guessed who Meng Hao was. Meng Hao greeted Lin Heilong and Zehai and the others with clasped hands. He looked toward Chu Yuyan and nodded, smiling. He also gave Yi Feimu a glance, then sat down cross-legged. He was also a Violet Furnace Lord, but he was Grandmaster Pill Demon's legacy apprentice, which was a very high position. According to sect rules, he was actually higher than a Violet Furnace Lord. However, Meng Hao knew that his cultivation base wasn't very high, so he didn't want to show off. Therefore, he sat next to Zehai, subtly placing Lin Heilong in the center position. Old Lin Heilong was an astute person, so how could he possibly not understand what Meng Hao was doing? He smiled and shook his head, not saying anything to break the facade. And Zehai chuckled. Looking at Meng Hao, he lowered his voice and said, "Elder brother Lin is just another Violet Furnace Lord. He only cares about the Tao of alchemy." Before finishing, he stopped, giving Meng Hao a look. He knew that Meng Hao was a smart person and would be able to ascertain the meaning of his words. "Don't worry, elder brethren, I understand." Meng Hao could tell that Zehai was trying to make sure that he didn't brood over the events from the day that Meng Hao was raised to Violet Furnace Lord. Meng Hao smiled, then looked around the area, his eyes eventually coming to rest on the flag with the Jai character on it. No one knew it, but when he first laid eyes on the flag, his heart was shaken by great waves. Of course, he had covered it up well, not letting the tiniest shred of a reaction be seen. However, deep in his heart, the character Jai was surrounded by many unfathomable mysteries. The flag of 3 streamers was sealed with the surname Jai. The lifelong wish of the blood immortal of ancient doom was to refine the blood of the Jai clan into instruments of blood slaughtering. Furthermore, in the ancient blessed land where the heavens were round and the earth was square, when he had stood next to the square cauldron that wished to reverse the order of the cosmos, Meng Hao had experienced a vision in which the cauldron refused to exist under the same sky as the name Jai. There was also the legend of the ancient world tree, which had destroyed itself in the starry sky. All of these things seemed to have connection to the name Jai. There were countless ties that caused Meng Hao to tremble uncontrollably. This was especially true now, after seeing the name with his own eyes branded onto that flag. Having noticed what Meng Hao was looking at, and Zehai was silent for a moment, then quietly said, "That's the Jai clan from the eastern lands." It seemed almost as if he was worried others might hear, and thus lowered his voice in caution. He seemed to be jumpy when talking about the name, even filled with dread, as if he were an ant discussing an elephant. Meng Hao's eyes glittered imperceptibly. When he heard the fear in Zehai's voice, he looked over at him. "I don't know much about their clan," continued Zehai, his voice still low. "Everything I know is what I've heard from Master. The Jai clan from the eastern lands is the #1 clan in the lands of South Heaven. Their base, of course, is in the eastern lands, and no one knows exactly how deep their power runs. However, you must absolutely, positively never forget that the Jai clan is by no means, under any circumstances, to be provoked." His voice was so low that only Meng Hao could hear his words. There actually aren't very many clan members, but any one of them should be considered beyond provocation. This is especially true of any quasi-ray sons of Jai. Everyone is inestimably highly ranked. The one you saw just now. If my guess is correct, he is definitely one of the sons of Jai, of the quasi-ray of the Jai clan. If he were not, he wouldn't be of the core formation stage, considering how young he is. Jai clan members, especially those of the quasi-ray, are all chosen. Every generation must undergo a variety of intense training regimens to prepare to fight for one of the 100 spots available for true array clan members. I only know this much, which Master happened to casually mention once. Meng Hao sat there thoughtfully. He, too, only had a very basic understanding of the Jai clan. Based on all of his experiences related to Jai, he was sure that they possessed fearsomely deep resources, perhaps infinitely beyond what anyone understood. His voice low, and Zehai glanced over at the green pillar of light, and the 3 people sitting cross-legged therein, and continued, "You must not provoke those 3 any more than you should the people from the Jai clan. They are another of the most powerful clans in the lands of South Heaven. Fearsome. You came to the scene a bit late, so you don't know all the details of everything that's happened. I personally witnessed one of the Jai clan cultivators address that girl as a member of the Fang clan, and he looked scared. Think about it. What sort of profound background must those three have in order to inspire fear into the Jai clan? They must also be from the eastern lands. Thanks to Nzehai's explanation, Meng Hao now had a general understanding of the various forces in the area. He continued to look around, and as he did, his eyes suddenly locked with Su Qing's. Neither said a word. Everything was spoken through the look they exchanged. Their gazes quickly separated, but not before both understood everything that needed to be understood. Henbei, Wang Yaokai, Li Shiki, Li Dei, Zhoujai, Wang Lihai, Han Shandao, Chen Fan as well as Song Yunchu from the Song clan along with beautiful bitter Song Jia were all familiar to Meng Hao. All were present among the forces of their various sects and clans. Scanning over everyone, Meng Hao didn't see Fatty anywhere. Time passed by. Meng Hao wasn't sure what everyone was waiting for, but he didn't see anyone leave the area of the Pillar of Light. Eventually, the black fog up above grew even darker. It was at this moment that Chu Yuyan approached Meng Hao and sat down next to him. She looked at him intently. Meng Hao had always felt that her intuition was far too keen. However, he kept his expression the same as ever as he looked back at her. When their gazes met, Chu Yuyan didn't look away. "From the year you arrived in the East Pill Division," she said softly, "I felt annoyed every time I looked at you. I've never been able to figure it out. However, perhaps, it's possible that I saw you somewhere before in the past." Meng Hao's expression looked the same as it always did. However, inside, his heart pounded with shock. He sighed again inwardly because of Chu Yuyan's frightening thinking ability. "Where exactly did we see each other before?" she said suddenly, staring into Meng Hao's eyes as if looking for some clues. After a long moment, she could tell that Meng Hao was not going to reply. She looked at him intently. "I don't care if you're Pill Cauldron or Fang Mu," she said, one word at a time. "I know that you have another identity. You're not willing to talk about it, so I won't ask. But one of these days I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out who you are." There was a trace of radiance within her stubbornness. It was faint, but Meng Hao could see it clearly. It was a glow that sprang up when she first talked about Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. "Impossible," he said to himself. Although he had never experienced the type of relationship that could exist between a man and a woman, he was no longer an ignorant youth and was capable of picking up on much of such interactions. That glow in her eyes was very similar to the glow that had been in Su Qing's eyes when they had parted outside the Black Civ sect. Meng Hao felt a little bit guilty, but also a bit proud. Chu Yuyan had been pestering him for years, even when she was engaged to Wang Tengfei. For her to change in this way actually made him feel somewhat pleased with himself. He cleared his throat, deciding that it was time to prove whether or not his speculations were correct. He lifted his right hand. Chu Yuyan watched, stupefied, as he reached out to place his hand onto her beautiful face. Immediately, her face turned crimson and her eyes went wide. Clearly she had never imagined that Fang Mu would possibly be so rude. Before he could actually touch her, he pulled his hand back, then looked at her and sighed. As he sighed, Chu Yuyan's face grew even redder. Fury blossomed in her phoenix-like eyes. She glared at Meng Hao, clearly on the verge of flying into a rage from shame. It was at this moment that, suddenly, a shocking roar filled the entire area surrounding the basin. Immediately, the two Violet Fate sect patriarchs opened their eyes. The patriarchs in the other nearby beams of light similarly opened their eyes. In almost the same instant, all of them, nearly 20 people, flew out toward the basin. Wu Dinkyu's eyes began to glow, and he spoke to the surrounding Violet Fate sect disciples. "It's starting again. The patriarchs from the various sects will suppress the area surrounding the Rebirth Cave. We must move as quickly as possible. Remember, the Violet Chi Division will cooperate with the East Pill Division. We must acquire a sample of blood from the corpse." This chapter was sponsored by Brett Flowers, Dewi Suryon, Newton Nganda, Eugene Leung, Sunny Gola, MHD Siamir, and Caleb Gleason. This character Fang is a common surname, the same Fang as in Meng Hao's assumed name, Fang Mu, Chinese letter. Chapter 298, The Corpse Moved. Wu Dinkyu's eyes glittered as he leaped into the air and began to fly forward. "East Pill Division disciples, do not touch any part of the corpse," he cried. "Violet Chi Division, follow my lead. We will have the time it takes an incense stick to burn. Let's take advantage of that time to acquire some of this immortal's blood." The Violet Chi Division cultivators flew into the air with him. The East Pill Division cultivators around Meng Hao also began to shoot into the air to follow. Chu Yuyan glared viciously at Meng Hao for a moment. Then she turned her supple waist and flexed her long legs. As she turned, her robe pulled tight around her firm rear end, which Meng Hao couldn't help but notice. She, along with Lin Heilong and the other alchemist cultivators, all shot off toward the basin surrounding the rebirth cave. Of course, that is exactly where the immortal's corpse was located. Meng Hao took a deep breath. He was no longer thinking about the matter regarding Chu Yuyan. Instead, as he flew up into the air, he focused his thoughts. Flying next to him was none other than Yifeimu. Yifeimu explained, "Nothing blocks the way to the corpse. If you touch it, you're sucked into a strange realm. Some return, others don't. Every day the corpse's power drops by half and the rebirth cave's life emerges. Therefore, the patriarchs from the various sects will go ahead to stand guard, giving the rest of the sect disciples a window of time. Unlike some of the other sects, all we need is a sample of blood. As for the Violet Chi Division, it's possible they have some other goals. However, they will cooperate with us. After we get some blood, then we can focus on other priorities. The reason so many alchemists and Violet Furnace Lords are here is because the blood from the immortal's corpse is actually invisible. The instant it leaves the corpse, it dissipates into heaven and earth. Only us cultivators of the Tao of Alchemy can take advantage of that instant to use pill concoction techniques to capture and refine the escaping blood." Yifeimu's explanation was extremely detailed. Once he finished, he lowered his head and increased his speed as he proceeded forward. It seemed the only reason he had been hanging back was to explain these things to Meng Hao. Meng Hao could sense the ease and tension between them. However, a bit of challenge still existed within his words, as if he wanted to warn Meng Hao that he would be waiting to see who would be the first to refine some of the immortal's blood. Meng Hao had not come here for any blood sample, though. He had come because of the beckoning voice. Everyone else might be unaware, but Meng Hao knew that this person was not dead at all. Many thoughts flowed through his head as he transformed into a beam of light that shot forward. He flashed through the air, soon catching sight of Li Daili, Zhou Jai, Su Qing, and the others. All of them were converging on the basin. What most captured Meng Hao's attention was the young man named Jai. His cultivation base was at the peak of the early core formation stage, and he was surrounded by 7 or 8 guards, all of them old men. He moved forward, his entire body exuding a lofty and proud air. Completely disregarding all of the surrounding southern domain cultivators, he sped off into the distance. At the same time, the young woman surnamed Fang shot forward, her face filled with cold indifference, her entire body emanating blinding silver light. The beams of light shot off of her like sharp arrows, causing anyone who looked at her to feel stabs of pain. The Jai youth and the Fang girl were both matchlessly stunning. Whether intentionally or not, they had long since become the focus of attention in the area. Next to them, anyone, be they chosen or Dao child, were like ants. The difference in status was just too great. This of course caused the southern domain's chosen and Dao children to feel somewhat recalcitrant. However, keeping in mind the warnings of their various sects and fearsome power of the two, they maintained their silence. The western desert cultivators were also present. They were big and tall, and their bodies were covered with totemic tattoos. As they flew forward toward the basin, their totems shone with rays of bright light, clearly beyond ordinary. A short amount of time passed, and soon, the moment of opportunity arrived for any cultivator who neared. It didn't matter what purpose the various sects had, all their disciples charged forward. In fact, many of the disciples from the other sects outside of the main periphery had calculated the time and were now charging forward too. Meng Hao focused himself, accelerating for the space of about 10 or more breaths. Suddenly, he felt as if a wind were blowing up against him. The wind carried with it the stench of decay, and as it passed over him, he felt his skin becoming sticky, as if he were covered in sweat. The bizarre wind of decay penetrated into his flesh, piercing through him, causing his expression to change. He could immediately sense that everyone around him was feeling the exact same thing. At the same time, the aura of the nascent soul cultivators from the various clans began to weaken, as if it were being violently suppressed. Meng Hao recalled being told about this phenomena when he first arrived. It didn't take long for Wu Dinkyu's cultivation base to be suppressed down to the great circle of core formation. His face was pale as he led everyone forward through the black fog, closer and closer to the mountain-like corpse. The instant Meng Hao caught sight of the corpse, he saw that it really was the size of a small mountain. Its skin was gray, and covered with brands that looked like magical symbols. The symbols seemed to squirm bizarrely and emitted glowing light. The five-colored light twisted up into the air, but was obscured by the black fog, making it difficult to see clearly. However, the closer he got, the clearer it became. The magical symbols were obviously grouping together into a larger text. As the cultivators from the other sects approached and saw the magical text, someone cried out, "The Tao Divinity Scripture!" More and more cultivators neared, and more than half of them sank to the ground cross-legged to stare at the scriptural text. Some of the Violet Fate sect disciples also stopped and sat down cross-legged to stare at the magical symbols. Meng Hao glanced over, frowning slightly. In that slight glance, he suddenly realized that his spiritual sense was showing signs of disorder. He immediately focused his vision, looking toward the corpse. Disciples from other sects who were clearly more interested in the corpse itself were now nearing it. As he approached, its sheer vastness filled his vision. Wu Dinkyu led the Violet Qi Division disciples, clearly fearful of the strange teleportation effect. All he intended to do was break the skin of the corpse and extract some blood. Suddenly, the beckoning feeling once again appeared, floating deep within Meng Hao's mind. Come to me. I've been waiting a long time for you. The whole truth, all the answers will be explained to you, my heir. The beckoning filled Meng Hao's whole body, causing him to tremble. Looking around, it was clear that no one else could hear the sounds which he was now hearing in his ears, the calling. The instant he began to look around, a roaring sound suddenly began to fill the air, coming from the corpse itself. At the same time, the ground began to shake. The entire rebirth cave basin began to quake violently. A thunderous sound echoed out, causing the surrounding cultivators' expressions to change immediately. "It moved," cried someone from one of the other sects. "I just saw the corpse's hand move." "That's impossible. This corpse has been dead for years. How could it possibly move?" "I saw it too. The corpse's hand moved a bit. It couldn't have been an illusion." Meng Hao began to pant. He too had just seen the supposedly dead corpse move its right hand. He knew that he wasn't mistaken. After all, he had known from quite some time ago that this supposed corpse was actually alive. As gasps of astonishment filled the air and the thunderous sound filled the air, all eyes instantly swiveled to look toward the corpse. The corpse slowly lifted its enormous hand into the air. The speed with which it moved seemed slow, but within the blink of an eye, the hand had reached up high, as if it were going to place its hand on its head. Instead, its hand suddenly descended at high speed toward the ground. This caused everyone's scalps to go numb and to gape with wide eyes. Just as everyone was about to shoot backward in retreat, the hand slammed into the ground. Boom! 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 An indescribably loud sound shattered the air. The ground quaked and the sky drained of color. At the same time, the black fog shot up into the sky. The earth rippled into great waves, sweeping out as if it were an attack. Blood-curdling screams filled the air. Everything went dim and was thrown into chaos. The shocking boom resonated out and the ground heaved. The faces of the various sect patriarchs who were leading the way to the rebirth cave immediately fell. At the same time, the fog floating in the sky began to seethe violently, then shoot back toward the ground. Next, an incredible, indescribable gravitational force sprang into being. It emanated out from the corpse, immediately beginning to drag everything in the area toward the corpse. The nearby cultivators had no time to avoid it and were instantly snagged by the force and sucked in. As soon as they touched the surface of the corpse, they disappeared. Li Shiki, Wang Yaokai, Li Dai, Wang Lihai, Zhou Jai, Chen Fan, all of them were instantly grabbed by the wild gravitational force. In the blink of an eye, they were sent tumbling toward the corpse and then disappeared, teleported to who knew what strange place. Next to Meng Hao, Chu Yuyan and Yi Feimu, as well as the rest of the East Pill Division and Violet Qi Division cultivators, were incapable of evading. All of them were sent spinning toward the corpse, and then disappeared. To Meng Hao, it felt as if some enormous hand had grabbed him and was dragging him toward the corpse. There was nothing he could do to prevent it. His expression, however, was calm. He could tell that the force which was grabbing him contained no evil. If it did, then considering its abilities, even if he tried to escape far away, he still wouldn't be safe. This he knew. "Well, you've called for me 3 times already, I might as well go along." His eyes shone brightly. After feeling the beckoning 3 times and hearing the words contained therein, he had long since understood that he absolutely must come here. The importance of heaven and earth is superseded by the importance of one's father and mother. The matter of his parents had weighed on his heart from the very beginning. He had an intense feeling that this was his chance to get some answers. The instant he touched the corpse and vanished, Meng Hao saw the Jai clan youth and the young Fang woman also being sucked in and vanishing. After that, everything went black. Chapter 299, Destroying Totems in the Maze. In the same instant, the world in front of him was no longer black, but filled with grayish light. Meng Hao could clearly tell that just now, his body had been affected by a teleportation spell. The teleportation had moved him somewhere, although he wasn't sure exactly where. When things became clear, Meng Hao looked around. Immediately his brow furrowed. He saw an ancient wall, which was flecked with spots of blood that had been there for who knew how many years. Looking overhead, it seemed as if the wall stretched up into the heavens themselves. Apparently, it was endlessly high. There wasn't just one wall, but two, forming a corridor. Meng Hao's eyes flickered. He didn't go forward down the corridor, but rather flew straight into the air. He shot upward for a while. However, even after focusing the power of his cultivation base into his eyes, he still was incapable of seeing the tops of the walls. They have no end, he thought, slowly floating back down. He didn't land onto the ground, but rather floated there in midair. This place had a stifling air. It seemed that there were only two paths to pick from, either forward or backward. Meng Hao thought of the other cultivators who had touched the corpse and of the things they had talked about. Upon returning, each had described different scenes. One saw mountains, another a river. One saw buildings, another celestial scenes. One even saw a battlefield. Meng Hao thoughtfully lifted his hand into the air and then struck out 7 or 8 times. A roaring filled the air as a black-colored palm appeared that looked as if it were formed from roiling mist. It shot forward toward one of the walls. Considering its incredible speed, it only took a moment before it slammed into the wall. No sound could be heard. It was like the palm had been sucked in by the wall. There wasn't even the tiniest mark left now. Meng Hao's face sank. Just now, he had only attacked with 50% power. However, considering he was of the full circle of Foundation establishment, he could easily smash a wall into powder. However, this wall didn't even tremble. After a moment's thought, Meng Hao set his jaw. Eyes glittering, he shot forward. If he could fly up and the walls were unbreakable, then he might as well go forward. He whistled through the air at top speed, heading forward. Before he got too far, the two walls on either side of him began to grow wider apart. The area in front of him grew larger, and another wall appeared, causing the path to split into two. When he saw the path split ahead of him, realization flickered in his eyes. A maze. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the maze, Li Dai shot forward grim-faced, as did Zhou Jai, Wang Lihai, Su Qing, Han Bei, and the others. All of them were inside the maze. So was the young man from the Jai clan, as well as the girl surnamed Fang. All of them were in different areas of this huge maze. So far, no one had encountered any of the others, which made everyone come to the conclusion that they were alone inside. In the past, whoever had returned after touching the immortal's corpse described being teleported to different places. Never had there been a repetition. Days passed. Meng Hao's expression was calm. He had encountered many junctions in the path, and never once did he hesitate. He would pick a road and proceed forward without thinking too much about it. Considering you called me here, well, I'm not going to go looking for you. You'll show up eventually. He flew along calmly for several days. One day, a 5-path junction appeared up ahead of him. Meng Hao glanced it over and was about to pick the center path when suddenly his eyes flickered and he retreated backward. At the same time, he lifted his right hand, quickly slicing his index finger as he shot back, and then waved it toward the intersection. Even as he moved backward, a black streak like lightning shot toward him through the air. If he hadn't retreated just now, he definitely would have been seriously injured. Instead, his finger attack just now erupted with billowing, killing blood chi. It slammed into the incoming black streak. An explosion filled the air. As it rang out, Meng Hao's face grew grim and killing intent flickered within his eyes. He fell back 3 more paces and then came to a stop. He lifted his hand again, and as he did, violet chi swirled around his body. The chi flowed toward his hand, transforming into a long, violet-colored blade. Suddenly, he moved forward without hesitation, and as he did, he waved his hand ahead in a chopping motion. A rumble filled the air as a flash of violet light slashed out from his hand, transforming midair into a curved, 3-meter-long arc. Wisps of violet chi continued to emanate out from Meng Hao, melding into the curved shape. This was the violet chi guillotine. 1. Meng Hao learned the violet qi guillotine way back in chapter 242. Filled with the power of a perfect foundation, 10 Dao pillars and violet qi from the east, this was a deadly magical attack. The violet qi guillotine looked like a crescent moon as it shot through the air toward the intersection. As it entered the crossroads, the air distorted around it, rippling. The emptiness twisted, making what had seemed like a void before look as if it were covered with a veil that was now being lifted up. Suddenly, a figure became visible. It was a middle-aged man. He was more than 3 heads taller than Meng Hao and incredibly muscular. He wore a simple garment, and visible on his skin was a depiction of a 3-headed flood dragon totem. This was a cultivator from the western desert. Now that he had been revealed, he suddenly lifted his right arm and opened his mouth with a shout. A black glow emerged from his forehead. The totem covering his body began to glow with a black aura, and in front of him, an incredibly realistic image of a 3-headed flood dragon appeared. Roaring, it shot forward and tore into the violet qi guillotine. A boom filled the air, rocking everything. Meng Hao watched as the violet qi guillotine began to disintegrate, transforming into wisps of violet qi that dissipated into the air. At the same time, the 3-headed flood dragon also began to break up into pieces. The western desert cultivator's face was unsightly as he stared in shock at Meng Hao. Meng Hao gave a cold snort, lifting his hand and waving it forward. Violet qi garrote. As he waved his hand, the violet qi in the area suddenly stilled. Then it began to twist, extending, transforming into countless threads that circled around the western desert cultivator. It rapidly surrounded him, emitting sharp whistling sounds. Suddenly, Meng Hao clenched his hand into a fist, and the strands of violet qi contracted. This technique was something Meng Hao had learned after becoming a violet furnace lord. This was the second form of the violet qi guillotine, a technique from the violet qi division. In addition to this second form, there was a third form called violet gibbous moon. The western desert cultivator's face was dark as the violet qi garrote closed in around him. He gave a cold harumph, then began to lift his right arm, upon the back of which suddenly appeared a totem. This totem was simple. It was a red fist, about the size of an infant's hand. However, in the blink of an eye, a roaring power exploded out from the body of the western desert cultivator. The hand of his upraised arm clenched into a fist and punched downward. The fist hit nothing but air, but as it did, layers of ripples surged out. The piercing shriek of an infant could be heard, and as it echoed out, the ripples slammed into the surrounding violet qi. Immediately, the violet qi began to disintegrate. The face of the western desert cultivator was pale. Blood oozed out of the corners of his mouth. He looked toward Meng Hao with fear in his eyes. "You're an alchemist from the southern domain's violet fate sect," he said, retreating backward. "I never imagined that you would have a cultivation base such as this. Sir, I was rash just now. I'll take my leave." A third totem appeared on his left arm, but it appeared to be only half completed, not a full totem. The cultivator's body began to grow blurry, as if he would disappear into the air. "A bit rash," said Meng Hao, his eyes glittering with killing intent. If he hadn't dodged at just the right time, he would have been beheaded. Even as the words left his mouth, he shot forward. "You southern domain cultivators really don't know when to give up," said the western desert cultivator with a cold snort. "It's obvious that we're both in the pseudo-core stage. You used full power just now. Clearly we're an even match." Ferocity suddenly filled his face. His expression had changed because, as Meng Hao advanced, he began to rotate his cultivation base, causing power to explode out. This power was even greater than that from before, causing everything in the area to shake. Meng Hao lifted up his right hand and extended 3 fingers. A shocking 3-fingered blood palm appeared. It transformed into a murderous blood qi which shot toward the western desert cultivator. "Live through this 3-finger strike and you can leave." The face of the western desert cultivator flickered, filling with astonishment. The blurriness surrounding his body instantly disappeared. He couldn't possibly maintain his invisibility. He lifted his hand and tapped his forehead. The 3-headed flood dragon totem, as well as the blood-colored fist totem, both appeared and shot forward. Meng Hao's 3-fingered blood palm slammed into them. The resulting massive boom echoed out in all directions. The western desert cultivator let out a blood-curdling scream. His body shook as the fist totem shattered. Blood sprayed from his mouth as the 3-headed flood dragon totem disintegrated. He retreated backward several paces, his face pale. Before he could say a single word, a single blood finger slammed into his forehead. A tremor ran through his body, and he toppled to the ground dead. Meng Hao approached. He looked down at the dead Western Desert cultivator, whose name he didn't even know. He knelt down next to the body and fished out a bag of holding. His eyes shone with thoughtfulness. So, it seems I'm not alone in this place. These Western Desert cultivators have some strange techniques. They're as different from those of the Southern Domain as black is from white. If not, a single blood finger would have been sufficient to slay a pseudo-core cultivator. Giving a final glance to the Western Desert cultivator, he noticed that the totem on the man's arms were fading and transforming into black ink. This chapter was sponsored by Oliver Dearnley, Lim Derrick, and Daniel Nunes. Chapter 300, An Ancient Starry Sky. The Western Desert. Meng Hao frowned. On this side of the Milky Way Sea was the Western Desert and the Southern Domain. In the middle of the two were the Black Lands, which weren't very large. The Black Lands were the only passageway between the Southern Domain and the Western Desert. Other places had long since been sealed by patriarch cultivators from either of the two major powers, creating two continents or territories. Throughout history, there had been two great, world-shaking wars between the two continents. During those two great wars, all of the sects of both the Western Desert and the Southern Domain had participated. Such wars were not the type between two sects or clans. They were major wars between both of the enormous powers. The aggressor in both wars was the Western Desert. The Western Desert's cultivation resources were extremely limited. Furthermore, the climate was abominable and the spiritual energy scarce. Despite all that, it produced many outstanding individuals. Thus, in the midst of all the hardships, the Western Desert's power grew greater and greater. In the Western Desert, cultivation was not the focal point. The most important thing was survival. There, the law of the jungle was even more brutal, many times more so than in the Southern Domain. Under such circumstances, cultivators with talent, who stood out like awls sticking out through a bag, were generally much more powerful than their Southern Domain counterparts of the same level. They envied the Southern Domain's riches and fertility. Thus, they went to war. The two wars were what had given shape to the enormous sealed demarcation between the West and the South. Meng Hao lifted his hand. A flame sea surged out, completely burning the Western Desert cultivator's body into ash. Eyes flashing, Meng Hao transformed into a beam of light and proceeded onward, even more vigilantly than before. Time slowly passed by. Within this maze were not just cultivators from the Western Desert, but also locals from the Southern Domain. When they ran into each other, sometimes they would help each other, other times fighting would erupt. Everything was quite chaotic. In the outside world, the patriarchs from the various sects had returned to their pillars of light. By now, anxiety could be seen on their faces. A month had already passed, and not one person had returned. A phenomenon such as this had never occurred in the past. Previously, upon touching the corpse, people would be teleported away, but at the most, they would be gone for half a month and then would be teleported back. Either that or they died. Another change from before was that a month ago, a shield had sprung up around the corpse that prevented anyone from nearing it. No one could get past the shield, not even spirit-severing patriarchs. However, they could sense that the shield was some type of aura which was emanating from the corpse. It was easy to speculate that this aura was life force. This supposed immortal was not dead. He still had one breath left. The Southern Domain was shaken to the core. Even more patriarchs arrived, but none of them were able to do a single thing. The only other option for the short term was to use some precious treasures to burst open the shield. However, it was obvious to them that even without the use of precious treasures, the shield would naturally dissipate within another month. Also, the sects could not help but notice that the majority of the life slips of their various disciples were still intact and had not been shattered. Obviously, most of the disciples were alive, although in danger. For the moment, the best thing to do was to wait. After all, even though no one spoke it out loud, how could the patriarchs not see that the shield was less of an obstruction and more of a protection? The mass disappearance of all the disciples was dangerous, but could also be viewed as a stroke of good fortune. This was obviously a legacy. Within the maze, the Chosen and Tao children were using a variety of methods to attempt to find exits. None had succeeded so far. However, more than a few had acquired various bits of good fortune. For example, at the moment, Chu Yuyan was breathing heavily. She had just reached the end of a fork in the road. Up ahead was a huge wall covered with pill formulas. Each and every one sent her mind reeling. Li Shiki reached an area filled with buildings. She stared out at them for a while before realizing that she was surrounded by phantom figures that were walking to and fro. It was as if she had discovered some strange world in which she was simply an observer. The young man from the Jai clan, the quasi-ray cultivator, stood proudly with hands clasped behind his back as he looked out over a huge battlefield. The endless wreckage surrounding him didn't cause his expression to change in the slightest. He strolled aimlessly for a while until a coffin appeared in front of him. As for the young woman from the Fang clan of the Eastern Lands, her expression was cool as she walked through a celestial land. White cranes flew overhead, and the surroundings were incredibly beautiful. Li Dai, Wang Yaokai, Han Shandao, Chen Fan as well as Su Qing and Han Bei were all in various regions of the maze. As it turned out, the scenes they were witnessing were the very same scenes that had been seen by others who had entered the maze previously. After traveling for many days, Meng Hao's path finally reached an end, as he emerged into a new world. More accurately, it was a vast field of stars. Endless, uncountable stars, emitting glorious starlight. Everything was quiet, not the slightest sound could be heard. Meng Hao walked amongst the stars, looking around. As he did, he sensed the power of time. He could feel the vestiges of archaic ancientness in this place. The ancientness felt like the decay of more than 100,000 years. It was filled with an incomparable exhaustion, as if it were struggling to find a single breath within which pulsed the will to live. This field of stars felt unfamiliar to Meng Hao. The starry sky that he normally saw when he looked up at night was completely different. There didn't seem to be even a single star that was the same. These heavenly bodies emanated ancientness. After gazing upon them, it was clear that this was not the night sky of the southern domain. Meng Hao felt a tiny sensation, as if he were somehow melding together with these stars. When the feeling rose up, a profound sense of confidence and hope suddenly floated in his heart. It was a strange feeling. Meng Hao knew that every person who was teleported from the corpse into this place and then returned all saw something different. However, all of the places that people had seen before were now being revisited by the people currently inside, except for this starry sky. From beginning to end, no one, neither those who had lived nor those who had died, had laid eyes on this scene. Meng Hao was the only one. As he contemplated matters, Meng Hao suddenly looked down toward his feet. He could sense that far beneath him was a particular heavenly body that was emitting some sort of beckoning power. He felt himself being rapidly pulled toward it. The speed was hard to describe. He saw the heavenly body growing larger and larger until it filled his entire field of view. He saw clouds and then a sea and then land. The land stretched out limitlessly. Meng Hao could see mountain peaks and rivers, and then, suddenly, a particular mountain appeared in front of him. It was nighttime, and overhead the stars were visible. Without thinking about it, Meng Hao compared the sky to that of the southern domain. His heart trembled. It was true, this starry sky was absolutely different. The stars were clearer, as if there were nothing obscuring their glory. Their ancientness, their archaicness, was clearly visible. It was impossible to tell how long they had hung there in the sky. All of the stars were strange. Not a single one was a star that existed in the sky of the southern domain. "These are the ancient stars which exist in my memory," said a calm voice from behind Meng Hao. Meng Hao slowly turned. He wasn't sure when, but at some point a middle-aged man had appeared there, sitting on top of a boulder. The man wore a simple but elegant robe. His long, black hair flowed over his body. He was handsome, with a bit of a heretical aura in his face. He looked different than the corpse Meng Hao had seen back from the Tower of Tang. However, if you looked closely, you could see that it was the same person. Surprisingly, a small campfire burned in front of the man. Above the flames he was roasting, a snake-like creature. "Sit," said the man coolly. Meng Hao stood there thoughtfully for a moment, then approached and sat down. He looked at the bizarre snake roasting over the fire. It had claws, and despite being charred, it wasn't completely dead yet. It was still struggling. Even more shocking to Meng Hao was that the snake had horns like that of a deer. He stared at it even closer. Its body was almost as black as a piece of coal, but even still he could pick up some clues. He suddenly gasped. "This is a white dragon, that's all," said the man casually. "It has a limitless cultivation base that brings it close to the first level of the immortal realm. I ran into it on the 8th mountain. It was hungry and wanted to eat me. However, I was also hungry." Meng Hao wasn't sure how powerful the first level of the immortal realm was, nor exactly what the 8th mountain was. However, he was able to sense that this white dragon was shockingly powerful. "Want to have a bite?" asked the man, looking at Meng Hao. He lifted up the white dragon, which was about the length of an arm, and then quickly chopped it into 2 pieces. "Do you like the head more or the tail?" he he asked. Meng Hao hesitated, causing the man to laugh scoffingly. I'll have the head, Meng Hao said finally. You sure know how to eat, kid, replied the man, handing over the front half of the white dragon. Meng Hao took it, feeling somewhat trepidatious. He looked over as the man took a large bite from the tail part of the white dragon. After the first bite, he took another, then another, crunching the creature into pieces as he did. Meng Hao took a deep breath, eyeing the front half of the white dragon. Telling himself that this was just an illusion, he placed it into his mouth. Crunch, crunch, he began to eat it. The head was very crispy, and the flavor was actually quite delicious. His eyes lit up and he quickly consumed the entire thing. Soon, the whole front half of the white dragon was in his belly. Good, asked the man with a laugh looking at Meng Hao. I used to eat one every year. It doesn't taste bad at all, said Meng Hao, looking a bit embarrassed. Actually, you know what tastes even better than white dragons? Flying rain dragons, just like the one you have inside of you. Boil them into a soup, and the flavor is amazing. Unfortunately, flying rain dragons are quite rare. Once they grow up, tangling with them is very difficult. If I'm lucky, I might pursue one for 30,000 years before being able to have some of that soup. The man licked his lips and looked down toward Meng Hao's dantian. The look in the man's eyes caused Meng Hao to take a deep breath. This was because he had suddenly noticed that his first Tao pillar, the one with the flying rain dragon core inside of it, was suddenly trembling in intense fear. Chapter 301, Immortal Shows the Way. Meng Hao quickly decided to change the topic. Senior, sir, I'm sure you didn't just call me here to eat some white dragon. The way the man had looked at him just now made him feel like food and had caused his scalp to go numb. Only at this point did the man reluctantly look back up at the stars. These stars come from my memories of ancient times, said the man softly, sounding a bit melancholy. Unfortunately, I've been asleep for far too long. When I woke up, I was here in this land. I couldn't tell if the starry sky was the same or not, or whether there were more stars or fewer. Listen up, kid. My surname is Chuman. I was born outside the 7th mountain on planet Tiger Cage. My full name is Chuman Tai. 1. Chuman Tai's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Chumain Tai. This is a bit of a strange name. Chuman is a made-up surname. As for the meaning of this name, each of these characters has multiple definitions. Instead of listing them here, I will just put links so that you can research it yourself if you wish. Chumen Tai. The man looked back down from the stars and stared at Meng Hao with a solemn expression. Because I was on good terms with an old friend from the 8th mountain, I took part in the Dao War between the 8th and 9th mountains. During the course of the war, I was seriously injured. I should have perished, but I had one breath left that has kept me going until now. I may die, but I will not allow my legacy to end with me. As for you, the moment you saw me way back then, I acquired the coordinates to this planet, allowing me to fall here too. This happened back in Chapter 59. You have a special bloodline. If you're lucky, you should be able to leave this tiny planet South Heaven, travel to my home and return the legacy. That is my hope. If you're able to do it, well and good. If not, I still won't have any regrets. He studied Meng Hao for a moment. I have 3 boons to bestow upon you as way of repayment. The first boon is a mark that I created after I achieved enlightenment and gained immortality. Its name is Immortal Shows the Way. Only someone who has ascended to immortality in the 9 mountains and seas, and who is willing to sacrifice some cultivation base, can create something like this. It was supposed to be given to my descendants as a treasure. When you are of the great circle of Tao seeking, you can use it to step from that peak toward immortal ascension. Someone will show you the way, and your chances of succeeding in immortal ascension will increase by 30%. Furthermore, you won't be using some local power. Immortal Shows the Way can cause a starry sky to descend. He lifted his hand up and pressed down on his forehead. A resplendent ball of light immediately appeared. The glowing ball of light emanated an aura which did not belong to this world. As soon as Meng Hao sensed it, his mind began buzzing. This light contained a fearsome power. Were it to detonate, it could turn the entire southern domain into ash. Meng Hao began to pant as he stared at the glowing ball of light in the man's hand. The man had grown weaker by almost half. The stars and land around them seemed more unstable, even blurry. Immortal ascension is difficult, but with this, that difficulty will diminish greatly. Continue to grow until you reach that point, and when that time comes, you will most likely make the final step. This is the first boon. The man's face was pale, his body becoming less distinct. Yet he laughed and pressed the glowing Immortal Shows the Way into Meng Hao's forehead without hesitation. Such an object could cause countless experts among the stars to engage in ruthless struggle, yet the man handed it over freely. The glow fused into Meng Hao's body. Meng Hao trembled and closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he felt completely different, though he couldn't quite tell how. His head felt much clearer. The second boon I will bestow upon you is something you've likely heard of before, one of the three classic scriptures, the Tao Divinity Scripture. Sublime Spirit, Tao Divinity, Heaven Severing. These three scriptures aren't just passed down on this planet where you reside. These three classic scriptures are handed down throughout all the 9 mountains and seas. Unfortunately, what most people possess are mere fragments of the full scriptures. Up till now, only 2 people have ever been able to collect the full text of any one of them and been able to acquire the Tao Realm title. One of those was the Tao Divinity of the first mountain. The other was Sublime Spirit from your 9th mountain. Only these 2 powerful experts were able to collect the complete Sublime Spirit Scripture and Tao Divinity Scripture respectively. Everyone else only possesses fragments. As for the most mysterious of all, the Heaven Severing Scripture, for countless ages no one has ever been able to collect it in its entirety, nor cultivated the great circle of that realm to acquire the designation Heaven Severing. As for my Tao Divinity Scripture, I only have one manual, which is actually far more valuable than the rest. Mine is the Divine Sense Manual. One of the main reasons why I didn't die in the Tao War was because of this manual. My divine sense is about 3 times more powerful than anyone in the same stage as me, the superiority this manual grants. Triple is the limit, but acquiring other Tao Divinity fragments can increase that number. This art I pass to you. The man raised his right hand and pushed down onto Meng Hao's forehead. Immediately, a scriptural text began to float in Meng Hao's mind. Each magical symbol radiated a black glow as it branded itself onto Meng Hao's mind. Immediately, his body trembled as his spiritual sense experienced frenzied growth. After a few breaths, his spiritual sense had doubled. He could now easily send it out to cover everything around him. The stronger one's spiritual sense, the stronger the core chi. With core chi powering magical techniques, the results would be more shocking. Meng Hao's ability to deduce the ultimate form of his techniques now far surpassed others. This was only a simple branding, and Meng Hao's spiritual sense had doubled. Through continued cultivation, that increase would grow even greater. Yet this seemed a huge stroke of good fortune and left him breathing heavily. "What do you think?" laughed the man. "Just having it branded to you doubled your spiritual sense because of the half-dragon you ate. White dragons stem from divine sense. Your cultivation base isn't capable of completely assimilating it. That will take time. When it does, your divine sense will become vastly more stable." "White dragon," said Meng Hao without thinking. "You mean that wasn't an illusion?" The increase in his spiritual sense made him vastly more confident he could reach core formation. "Who said it was an illusion?" the man said, glaring and smacking Meng Hao's head. "You gluttonous little punk. That was the last dried white dragon I had saved. Its efficacy was low, but I'd planned to save it for my last meal. Instead, I gave you half. Oh well, it doesn't matter." The man seemed a bit jealous of Meng Hao's good fortune. He sighed and reached into his robe. "All right, I didn't finish. You have the first and second boons. Now the last. Kid, remember, if you don't deliver my legacy to Planet Tiger Cage, I'll curse you even in death." From within his body, he dragged out a glowing white globule. The glow carried with it a faint, delicate fragrance. Meng Hao gaped when he saw it. The glow contained a diamond-shaped object. This is my legacy," he whispered, "contained in a breath of my immortal chi, what you must take to Planet Tiger Cage. Dissolve it and you'll see the legacy. Only you. If you wish to study it, you may. Just get it there. Honestly, it would be difficult to fully assimilate within several hundred years." Looking pained, he took the diamond and pushed it into Meng Hao's chest. Meng Hao's body spasmed. The white diamond appeared amidst his 10 Tao pillars, white glow connecting with them. A boundless roar filled his cultivation base, exploding throughout his body. His 10 Tao pillars shook and radiated massive amounts of violet chi interlocking over the diamond. Meng Hao's mind spun, sensing a feeling similar to when he had consumed the 3 mortalities pill in his attempt to reach core formation. "I'm approaching core formation," Meng Hao said, panting. The man's body began to fade and he spoke in a rush. "You've reached the critical point. Dissipate some of my immortal chi to form your core. Look out for yourself. I'm placing all my hope in you. Be careful of the Black Civ sect and of the ancient power from the east. The Lord controlling that power has reached the pinnacle of this planet." The uniqueness of your bloodline and my speculations about your past are contained in this breath of immortal qi. Years from now, after you completely dissolve it, you'll understand. However, I can't guarantee it will be true. The world around them began to crack. I'm making one last bet by entering your rebirth cave. The mysteries within involve the Tao Sea beneath the ninth mountain. Look out, yourself. The mental realm is collapsing. Everyone inside will be teleported out. His voice came and went in spurts, then finally disappeared. An intense rumbling filled the area and everything collapsed. He was surrounded by walls again, but this time they were filled with fissures. Cracking sounds filled the air. Meng Hao looked around and took a deep breath. Everything had happened too quickly. It seemed like a dream, yet the Tao divinity scripture was in his mind, and the immortal Qi diamond was in his body. It was all real. His 10 Tao pillars were rapidly melting, releasing an unprecedentedly dense violet Qi wrapping around the diamond and slowly taking the shape of a core. Meng Hao knew he was entering core formation. The process would normally take a very long time, but with the immortal Qi's assistance, it would be sped up. He had reached a critical juncture. At that exact moment, a boom filled the air. A nearby wall suddenly exploded, and a potent aura poured through. "Finally found it," said a voice. "This is the place the patriarch spoke of. That person's immortal will is slumbering in this." The young man surnamed Jai suddenly appeared with a look of surprise. He wore a long azure robe. His eyes flickered as they fell upon Meng Hao. A mysterious light glowed therein. His expression suddenly turned grim. "Did you steal it?" he asked. This chapter was sponsored by Lock Fam and Gary. Chapter 302, Crisis. The Jai youth's expression was one of unyielding pride. He didn't seem to think Meng Hao was even worth looking at, speaking as he might to a servant. Meng Hao frowned. However, he thought of the fearsomeness of the clan, as well as the fear Sohe had shown. He thought about everything he had experienced and all the stories regarding Jai. Then, he immediately suppressed any feelings of displeasure he felt. Now was not the time to attack. His cultivation base had reached a critical juncture. To attack would affect the transformation. Furthermore, the Jai youth's cultivation base was at the peak of the early core formation stage, even higher than the azure-masked cultivator from the Black Lands he had fought. "Your Excellency, I'm not quite sure what you mean," said Meng Hao, looking surprised. "I just arrived and haven't found anything. Don't tell me there's treasure here." Greed gleamed in his eyes. The Jai youth's eyes glittered as he glanced at Meng Hao, utter disdain covering his face. He looked around, still suspicious. This guy's cultivation base is at the foundation establishment level, he thought. No matter how weak the immortal is, there's no way this guy could penetrate his immortal sense. Plus, he's slumbering. Even I couldn't forcibly break into the immortal sense, not even with the device given to me by the patriarch. So could it have been taken earlier by someone else? The image of the girl surnamed Fang appeared in his mind. He glanced over at Meng Hao. "Did you encounter anyone on your way here?" "Tell me immediately what you saw," he demanded. "If you leave out anything, I will wipe you, your sect, and your clan." No attempt to hide his disdain and superciliousness. Meng Hao hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Yes, I did see someone in a green robe. I couldn't see clearly which fellow Taoist it was, this place." Before he could finish, the Jai youth seemed to have made his mind up. He flicked his sleeve impatiently. "Screw off," he said. Meng Hao's eyes flickered with an imperceptible coldness. However, a cowardly look appeared on his face, and he immediately backed up, then turned to leave. At that exact moment, the wall next to him suddenly exploded outward, and a person in green emerged. An incredibly potent aura enveloped the entire area, containing not only power but a feeling of extreme conceit. The aura rolled out as the figure emerged slowly, a young woman, none other than the girl surnamed Fang from the eastern lands. Her eyes fell onto the Jai youth immediately. Meng Hao was standing right next to her, but she completely ignored him. The arrogance which emanated from her was virtually palpable. "Jai Hongdong, give the immortal scripture to me," said the young woman coolly. She was beautiful and emanated icy arrogance. When the girl appeared, Meng Hao's heart thumped and he backed up a few paces. Before he could get far, the Jai youth's eyes narrowed. "Fang Yu, it turns out you took the immortal scripture and still." He only finished half of his thought when his heart suddenly trembled. He abruptly looked at Meng Hao, and as he did, he blinked his right eye 7 times in rapid succession. Suddenly, 2 pupils could be seen within his eye. They seemed to possess some power of psychic sight. As he looked at Meng Hao, he immediately was able to see the white diamond in Meng Hao's dantian. 2. Fang Yu's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Fang Yu. Fang is a family name. Yu means beauty or jade. In addition to the diamond, there was a blurriness. Even the diamond by itself was enough to cause killing intent to spring out from the Jai youth's eyes. However, just as soon as it appeared, it then vanished. The speed with which all of this happened was such that, if you blinked, you wouldn't be able to pick up even the slightest clue that something was happening. Preposterous, said the Jai youth with a cold laugh. He shot toward Feng Yu, waving his right hand to form a field of stars behind him. Feng Yu gave a cold snort and advanced, lifting her hand and punching out. A huge boom resonated in all directions. Meng Hao immediately tumbled backward, then picked a random direction and sped off. His face was grim. Jai Hongdong had seen through him but wouldn't pursue because of the Fang girl. Instead, he planned to come after Meng Hao later alone. The walls continued filling with cracks. Meng Hao wasn't sure how long until they crumbled completely. He slapped his bag of holding to retrieve the good luck charm and pressed down on it. A frustrated look appeared on his face. For the first time ever, the good luck charm was powerless to teleport him away. I can't place all my hope on the collapse, thought Meng Hao. Before it fell, he had a chance to flee. Once complete, if Jai Hongdong came after him, he'd be in a very bad position. Jai Hongdong's status and place in the fearsome Jai clan meant his death would be monolithic disaster. Meng Hao wasn't sure the Violet Fate sect could fight back. The two powers weren't on the same level. Grim-faced, Meng Hao continued for a bit less than half an incense stick's burn. Finally, he gritted his teeth and stopped, sitting cross-legged. Ignoring the crumbling walls, he meditated and rotated his cultivation base, pushing toward core formation as fast as possible. I will only seize the initiative after I reach core formation. A bright glow appeared in his eyes. He closed his eyes and spit out a mouthful of mist crackling with lightning around him. A blood-colored halo emerged, and a blood clone materialized to guard over him. Meng Hao's 10 Dao pillars emitted a roaring sound that only he could hear. Massive amounts of violet qi poured forth, causing the Dao pillars to begin to melt and then merge together. Once the Dao pillars fully melted, he would form his core. Thanks to the immortal qi, this would happen much more quickly. He would set the record as the fastest to reach core formation since ancient times. Time passed by. Meng Hao wasn't sure when Jai Hongdong would come for him. However, it would happen quickly, he was sure of that. Jai Hongdong had picked up on the clues. Once he shook off the young Fang woman, he would be coming for Meng Hao. Faster, thought Meng Hao, circulating all the power in his cultivation base. A shocking roar filled his mind as his 10th Dao pillar melted. As the Dao pillar melted, vast quantities of violet qi poured out, wrapping around and around the collection of violet mist which already existed around the immortal qi. The globule of violet mist rotated rapidly, emitting countless strands of violet qi throughout Meng Hao's body. A brutally powerful aura appeared within Meng Hao. His physical body grew more powerful, his spiritual sense expanded, and most obviously, the blood clone and the blood death world he was within slowly began to grow stronger. As the true self grew stronger, so did they. Meng Hao wasn't satisfied. The speed was too slow. Veins bulged on his face as he pushed everything into rotating his cultivation base. His 9th Dao pillar began melting, more violet qi pouring out. The violet mist globule rotated even more rapidly, showing signs of condensing into a core. Next his 8th Dao pillar, then his 7th. They melted one after another, filling him with rumbling booms. Boundless spiritual energy exploded out, causing the violet mist to roil at even greater speed. It sucked in violet qi. As of this moment, Meng Hao's body was emitting a bright violet glow. The globule of violet mist spun at high speed. All signs pointed to it forming into a violet core at any moment. Seeing this, Meng Hao quickly consumed a large amount of 3 mortalities pills. It still wasn't enough. Meng Hao could clearly sense that he was immeasurably close to core formation. Faster, growled Meng Hao inwardly. A thunderous noise as his 6th, 5th, and 4th Dao pillars melted. At this moment, Meng Hao heard a loud noise in the distance. Someone was using a magical technique. It's not Jai Hongdong, thought Meng Hao. He'd sent his spiritual sense out into the area long ago. He immediately caught sight of a figure approaching at high speed. Meng Hao sighed inwardly and opened his eyes. Off in the distance was Li Daiyi, wearing a thoughtful smile. Catching sight of Meng Hao, he gave a slight smile and said, I was wondering who it was that fellow Taoist Jai wanted me to pursue and delay. So it turns out it's Grandmaster Fang Mu. He slowly approached. As he neared, he suddenly stopped and gaped at Meng Hao. Core formation aura. You picked this moment to form your core, he laughed, his expression filled with a sneer. You really live up to your reputation, Grandmaster Fang Mu, he said. Very audacious. However, you took something that belongs to fellow Taoist Jai. That's a no-no. The mere sight of you fills me with the desire to kill. Make a move against me, and you'll cause a war between the Li clan and the Violet Fate sect, said Meng Hao coolly, his expression the same as ever. He was in a race against time. His cultivation base was rotating rapidly, causing his remaining 3 Dao pillars to begin to melt away. I would of course never attack you, said Li Dai with a hypocritical smile. I'll just block your way and make sure you don't leave. Your life belongs not to me but to fellow Taoist Jai. The clan patriarchs will be happy to allow this. He lifted his hand, extending it toward Meng Hao's forehead. Meng Hao sighed. He wouldn't be able to break through. Killing intent glittered in his eyes, and he was about to move when his face flickered. Li Dai's face also changed. He spun and dodged to the side. A clear, melodious snort rang out as a band of white light flashed through where he'd stood, then shot after him. Next, a prismatic beam shot toward them, coming to a stop next to Meng Hao. There, wearing a white robe, facial expression icy cold, was Su Qing. She glared at Li Dai. Make your breakthrough, she said calmly to Meng Hao. I'll take care of him. Her voice was cold, but as her words made their way into Meng Hao's heart, they transformed into gentle warmth. Jai Hongdong's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Jai Hongdong. Jai is a family name. Hong means great and also goose. Dong means east. Fang Yu's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Fang Yu. Fang is a family name. Yu means beauty or jade. Chapter 303, The Bloodline of the Jai Clan. Su Qing, Li Dai's eyes glowed brightly. He was not unfamiliar with Su Qing. Back in the western region of the southern domain, he had fought against her. During that fight, he had suffered a great defeat. Later, he was able to make a breakthrough and enter the core formation stage, but the loss that day had been extremely irritating. Seeing Su Qing again now caused his eyes to fill with coldness. Killing intent flickered inside of him, and he lifted his hand. Power of core formation emanated out. Su Qing's expression never changed from being cold. Her eyes glittered as a white-colored qi emanated out from her body, transforming into threads which shot toward Li Dai. A boom echoed out immediately. Meng Hao's eyes were closed, focused on rotating his cultivation base. His 3rd Dao pillar began melting, sending violet qi surging through his body. His entire body was now violet-colored. Su Qing and Li Dai were locked in a magical battle. Su Qing had the upper hand. She'd fused with Matriarch Phoenix, making it impossible for Li Dai to compare. She was essentially at the level of a sect patriarch. However, even if Su Qing actively attempted to meld, she would be unable to do so in a short period of time. Currently, she was only able to wield about 1% of the full power. Even that small amount still placed her above Li Dai. No matter what methods Li Dai employed as they fought, Su Qing's expression was the same as ever. Were she able to leave Meng Hao's side, to pursue Li Dai and use all the magical techniques she possessed, then she would easily be able to defeat him. However, she didn't want to take such a risk. She was worried that if she fully engaged in the battle, Li Dai would use some trick or another to affect Meng Hao's cultivation base. As the two of them fought, Meng Hao's 2nd Dao pillar began to melt, and after it disappeared, the 1st. Within 10 breaths, the flying rain dragon core was visible in his core sea and moved into the violet mist. The demonic core was already small. After merging into the violet mist, the mist globule began to rotate even faster. It was very obviously congealing into a core at this point. At that moment, Jai Hongdong appeared in the distance, flying toward them at high speed with his eyes closed, following the trail of an aura. His face was pale. Obviously, he had been injured while battling with the young Fang woman. Having shaken her off, here he was now, an intense light glittering underneath his eyelids. That lowbrow cultivator somehow pierced the immortal sense and acquired the immortal qi the patriarch mentioned. It doesn't matter. With his cultivation base, he won't absorb it quickly. Once I kill him and absorb it myself, I'll be promoted out of the quasi-ray to true member status. As this thought crossed his mind, he opened his eyes, gleaming with intense anticipation. He suddenly turned his head and looked toward Meng Hao. Found you, he said, flying directly toward him. As for Meng Hao, cracking sounds could be heard within his body. The violet mist globule within his core sea was shrinking. As it did, it began to grow more solid. It emanated a brilliant violet light as a thick exterior began to form. Once it was completely solid, the violet core formed. Then Meng Hao's cultivation base would rocket up. He would leave foundation establishment and enter core formation, and the ranks of the truly powerful experts. 10%, 20%, 30%. The rotation of the violet mist globule inside of him began to slow and looked more and more solid. It was shrinking also. All that remained was about the size of a fist. It didn't take long before the violet core truly began to emerge. As of now, Meng Hao could feel a throbbing power pulsing through him, far, far greater than anything he had felt before. This was not a normal violet core, but one formed from the 10 Tao pillars of a perfect foundation. The moment it appeared, it became the most powerful violet core ever seen in the tens of thousands of years that made up the history of the Violet Fate sect. This level of power was unheard of. Furthermore, after merging with the demonic core of the flying rain dragon, the violet core was even more brutally powerful. No one in the Violet Fate sect had even come close to touching such a level of power. Even Reverend Violet East, when he was in the core formation stage, had never reached this astonishing level. In addition to all that, Meng Hao's violet core was formed with the assistance of the breath of immortal qi. This core was something that had never been seen in the Violet Fate sect, the southern domain, the western desert, the northern reaches, or the eastern lands. 40%, 50%, 60%. Meng Hao could sense the aura of the violet mist within him growing stronger. His heart began to beat faster, his body grew stronger, the range of the spiritual sense grew greater. He could sense all these constant changes. Meng Hao suddenly caught sight of Jai Hongdong with his spiritual sense as he approached rapidly, far off in one breath, then upon them the next. At the same time that Jai Hongdong appeared, a boom filled the air. Li Dai coughed up some blood as he staggered back several paces to stand next to Jai Hongdong. He glared at Su Qing, his eyes full of murder. Su Qing's face was a bit pale, but her expression was cold as she stared at Jai Hongdong. "Excellent job, Li Dai," said Jai Hongdong coolly. "I will notify my clan regarding this matter and tell them that your Li clan performed a meritorious deed." "Please don't be so polite, young Master Jai. It is my honor to be able to assist the Jai clan. Young Master Jai, please allow me to take this woman away. She has attacked me twice so far, and today I plan to help her understand what it means to live a life worse than death." A vile, licentious look shone in his eyes. He liked cold women like this. "Do as you wish," replied Jai Hongdong coolly. He glanced at Su Qing, then looked at Meng Hao, who was still sitting there cross-legged, meditating. Looking at his cultivation base, and seeing that he was forming his core, caused a look of derision to appear in his eyes. "If Feng Yu hadn't appeared, I might have been fooled by you. Since you have the immortal qi in your body, then I have no choice but to slay you and refine it out of your corpse." With that, he took a step forward. A massive power emerged from his body. An image appeared behind him, that of mountains and rivers and a great land. It was a strange scene. It made it seem as if he were an emperor, and that the land he stepped on was part of his empire. As he proceeded forward, the violet mist within Meng Hao reached 80% completion and headed toward 90%. The powerful aura within him didn't emanate out from him at all. Instead, it surged throughout his body, filling him. Su Qing stepped in front of Meng Hao to block Jai Hongdong's way. "You overestimate yourself," said Jai Hongdong with a cold snort, taking another step. The massive image of mountains and rivers behind him suddenly expanded, exerting pressure onto Su Qing. This was Jai Hongdong's core qi manifestation, mountains and rivers making him seem an emperor with a royal aura. Su Qing's face paled under the pressure. Her eyes suddenly shined with blackness that completely covered the whites. Dark emptiness was all anyone would see. Suddenly, the aura emanating from her body was no longer white but black. Strands of blackness emerged, transforming into a host of vicious, demonic faces. The faces congealed together above her face to form into a black phoenix. It immediately charged, directly toward the royal will embodied by the mountains and rivers. Jai Hongdong's eyes narrowed, shocked by what had just happened. A boom rattled out and blood sprayed from Su Qing's mouth. She staggered backward, then grabbed Meng Hao. It was the same way she had grabbed him all those years ago when she took him from Mount Daqing. 1. This, of course, happened in Chapter 1. Holding him at her side, she shot off into the distance. Her face was pale and blood seeped from the corners of her mouth. Just now, she had used the power of Matriarch Phoenix, a power which did not fully belong to her. As a result, she had significantly injured herself. She was willing to take the risk, but in truth, she could not employ too much of the power, only a bit of it. As she sped away with Meng Hao, Jai Hongdong's face paled. He looked down and pulled a damaged jade pendant from near his chest. His face was unsightly, his eyes filled with killing intent as well as astonishment. Just now, she erupted with power similar to that of a nascent soul cultivation base. She even crushed my life-saving Jade. This girl's aura is interesting. It must be the power of a discarnate soul. Now I just have to see which discarnate soul of the southern domain dares to take shape before me, Jai Hongdong of the Jai clan. Who is it exactly that dares to attack me? A cruel smile twisted his face as he shot forward in pursuit. Li Dai followed him, sighing inwardly. Now he knew that Su Qing hadn't been using her full power during their fight. If she had, he would without a doubt be dead already. Obviously, she didn't use her full power when she attacked just now. That would cost her too much. Meng Hao couldn't see what was happening, but his spiritual sense made him aware of all the changes, even clearer than seeing with the naked eye. He saw Su Qing's blood, saw her risking her life. He felt a stab of pain in his heart, and waves of anger surged up in his heart. By the time she coughed up blood for the third time, the violet mist inside of Meng Hao was 90% complete and closing in on 100%. "Elder sister," he said, opening his eyes, "put me down, okay?" Su Qing didn't say anything. She ignored him, speeding forward as quickly as possible. He looked at her, warmth filling his eyes. Suddenly, a whistling sound could be heard as Jai Hongdong appeared, flying through the air. By now, the walls in the area were more than half crumbled to pieces. It wouldn't be long before they completely disintegrated. When Jai Hongdong appeared, a look of determination appeared in Su Qing's eyes. She waved her left hand, and her body trembled as massive amounts of black aura shot out, forming into the shape of a black phoenix, filled with countless discarnate souls. Shrill screams filled the air as it shot toward Jai Hongdong. "Are you blind?" said Jai Hongdong with a cold snort. "Do you dare to offend the bloodline of the Jai clan?" He continued forward without hesitation. This chapter was sponsored by Bornemisza Peter, Justice Saman Zakia, Dennis Anderson, Jai Chen, Alex Faklam, and Extreme GTP. Chapter 304, Core Formation. By the time the words left Jai Hongdong's mouth, the phoenix, formed from the black aura as well as countless discarnate souls, was around 20 to 25 meters away from him. Suddenly, it began to tremble. The vicious faces of the discarnate souls suddenly filled with dread and shock, as if encountering something terrifying. The black phoenix emitted a shrill scream, as if it didn't want to proceed any further forward. It lowered its head, almost like it was bowing to Jai Hongdong. The expression on Su Qing's face immediately changed. She began to tremble, and her eyes filled with disbelief. How could she possibly have predicted that the discarnate souls of the Black Civ sect, who were as powerful as the sun at high noon, would prostrate before a core formation cultivator? "Your bloodline." Her heart thumped as she suddenly understood what Jai Hongdong had just spoken. Jai Hongdong gave a cold harumph and once again spoke. "Trifling discarnate souls. In front of the bloodline of the Jai clan, they don't even count as wild dogs. They're nothing but insects. When they died under the heavens of the Jai clan." His words were cool, his countenance proud. He never stopped moving forward. As he did, the discarnate souls shrieked. They retreated backward, prostrating, their faces filled with looks of entreaty. The black phoenix trembled violently as Jai Hongdong approached, and suddenly, a face appeared on its surface. It was the face of a woman. This was not Su Qing's face, but rather the sealed matriarch phoenix. Her eyes were closed and her expression was one of terror, and even more so, imploring. She wanted to offer an explanation, but it seemed she had lost her power to speak or even open her eyes. Slowly, a bright red sealing mark appeared on her face. When Jai Hongdong saw the face, he blinked 7 times. A bizarre light shone out as he studied her. A strange expression appeared on his face, and then he laughed. "Interesting," he said, with a meaningful smile. "I've heard of discarnate souls possessing people, but I've never heard of a host taking control of the discarnate soul." He looked at Li Dai. "What is her name and sect?" "Black Civ sect Su Qing," replied Li Dai immediately. "Su Qing? Interesting," he said with a wicked smile. "I'm not sure how you did it, fooling the Black Civ sect and the other discarnate souls into thinking you are the discarnate soul. Tell me, if word gets out, what happens to you?" He proceeded forward, laughing. He waved his right hand and all the discarnate souls retreated, even the black phoenix. Trembling, they didn't dare proceed any further. They weren't necessarily afraid of the young man in particular, but rather the fearsome bloodline of the Jai clan inside of him. Su Qing's face changed even more, becoming even paler. She well knew that if word spread, she wouldn't be able to flee far enough. She would be dead without doubt. It wouldn't just be the Black Civ sect that was chasing her, but all the fearsome discarnate souls. Whether it be the cultivators who lived on the surface of the Black Civ sect, or the discarnate souls beneath, not a single one would let her go free. There would be nowhere to flee to in the entire southern domain. All of her resources in the sect would be purged. No shelter would be found anywhere in the southern domain. Besides, even if she fled, she couldn't physically stay away for very long. The process of fusing with Matriarch Phoenix could only happen within the Black Civ sect. It was only there she could continue the process. Until Matriarch Phoenix was completely swallowed up, if she stayed away too long, her cultivation base would deteriorate. This matter had suddenly turned into a great disaster. Seeing Su Qing's change of expression caused Jai Hongdong to laugh. His eyes filled with derision. He loved seeing people like this. It gave him a feeling of power as if he were a great lord. And then there's this seal, he said. Very interesting. It helps you control the discarnate soul. The sect patriarchs will be interested. He laughed as he approached, derision filling his face as if everything was under his control. Su Qing's face was pale. Without control of the discarnate souls and the power of Matriarch Phoenix, she was just an ordinary cultivator. Even core formation power was difficult for her to wield. Furthermore, she couldn't retreat. She suddenly felt a binding around her, holding her in place as if she were being sealed. She couldn't move even an inch. "Don't worry, I'm not going to kill you," said Jai Hongdong. He neared, lifting his hand toward Meng Hao to grab him. As his hand closed in, Meng Hao's eyes snapped open. A frightening power surged from his cultivation base, ripping through the area like an invisible cyclone. Jai Hongdong's face twisted. He retreated backward nearly 30 meters, his face dark, pupils constricted. Next to him, Li Dai's expression was one of astonishment, disbelief, and alarm. Body trembling, he stared at Meng Hao's figure within the cyclone, and a look of venom and shock filled his eyes. He suddenly said, You're not Fang Mu, you're Meng Hao." His voice was shrill, and his breath came in pants. How could he ever have imagined that the person he had searched in vain for throughout all these years was actually right in front of him? As the words left his mouth, thunderous roars filled the air, and the violent winds surged outward. Meng Hao's figure seemed to surge upward. He was the nucleus of the cyclone. The terrifying winds were coming out from his body. Meng Hao's face suddenly changed. It was no longer Fang Mu's but his own, his original face. An intensely terrifying aura shot up from within him. Li Dai's face went pale. His mind was reeling. He just couldn't believe what was happening. However, how could he not understand that Fang Mu was Meng Hao and Meng Hao was Fang Mu? Violet Fate Sect Legacy Apprentice, Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, Fang Mu, Meng Hao. He retreated backward, thinking about the pain he had experienced when he lost his arm. It had been restored, but the enmity created in the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament was something he considered to be the greatest humiliation in his entire life. Surrounding by a violet glow, a profound look filled Meng Hao's eyes. Other than him, no one could know the reason for why he had just switched to his original appearance. His eyes glowed with coldness. Within him was a violet core, about the size of a child's fist. It rested in the position once occupied by his core C, floating there, rotating. Every time it spun in a full circle, vast quantities of violet-colored strands surged out like lightning to every corner of his body. The violet-colored strands flickered as they surged through his chi passageways, filled with a boundless cultivation base power that far exceeded foundation establishment. This was core formation chi, from a core formation cultivation base. This core formation chi wasn't from a base, just entering the core formation stage. It was the explosive power of the early core formation pinnacle. The violet wind screamed as it spun throughout the area. Even Meng Hao's long hair was now violet as it whipped around his head. Su Qing sighed. She'd thought of something. Her face changed, and she was about to speak when Meng Hao interrupted. "Don't worry, I'll take care of it," he said, his voice light. He turned, his eyes glowing with a violet light as he looked at Jai Hongdong. Jai Hongdong's expression was the same as usual. "Fang Mu, Meng Hao, it seems you have quite a few identities. Considering how quickly you entered core formation, it also seems that the breath of immortal chi really is incredibly valuable. That makes me happy." He smiled, lifting up his arm and then flicking his sleeve. Suddenly, a field of stars appeared behind him. The starfield was large, filling the air. It rushed toward Meng Hao, exerting a suppressive force. It was clear that this field of stars was that which shined above the southern domain, including the western desert and the eastern lands. It was vast and mighty. As it approached, it enveloped everything, making it impossible for anyone to avoid it. Meng Hao lifted his head, his expression a bit blank. He was silent, almost as if he didn't notice the starfield approaching him. As it descended, the blankness on his face disappeared, replaced instead with determination. As of now, a decision had been made. He lifted his hand, forming a fist. A red glow suddenly shot out. This was the blood-death world. It slammed into the starfield. An explosion filled the air, and Meng Hao tumbled backward like a kite with its string cut. "Fool, you," said Jai Hongdong with a cold laugh, his voice filled with contempt. However, before he could finish speaking, Meng Hao's tumbling body suddenly changed direction. It was with indescribable speed, before anyone could react, that he suddenly appeared directly in front of Li Dai. Li Dai had been on guard the entire time, but he still couldn't evade. Meng Hao's initial goal this entire time had been Li Dai, the easiest to exterminate, no matter how prepared he was. Li Dai's pupils constricted. He was about to shoot backward when Meng Hao lifted his right hand and pushed it down onto Li Dai's forehead. A boom filled the air, and an exterminating power poured into Li Dai's body, filling him, crushing him, mangling him. He was dead instantly. "Did you pay attention to the face of the person who killed you?" he asked softly, looking at Li Dai's bloody corpse. He turned to look at Jai Hongdong. Meng Hao sighed, then slapped his bag of holding and retrieved his East Pill Division identification medallion. He looked at it, his eyes filled with complicated, disconsolate feelings. Finally, determination filled his eyes and he crushed it. The instant he crushed the medallion, his violet furnace lord's robe began to disintegrate. A green robe now covered his body. He was no longer Fang Mu, legacy apprentice of the East Pill Division. Now he was Meng Hao from Mount Daqing in the state of Zhao. Chapter 305, Do You Dare to Kill Me? The instant Meng Hao crushed the Violet Furnace Lord medallion, the moment his Violet Furnace Lord robe began to fade away, something happened in the state of Eastern Emergence, Violet Fate Sect, East Pill Division, on Grandmaster Pill Demon's Low Mountain. In one building were 3 racks of jade slips. On the third rack were 9 jade slips. Upon each slip was written a name, and if you looked closely, you would see that they belonged to the 9 great furnace lords and Zehai, Yifeimu, and the others. These were all of Pill Demon's novitiates. There was only 1 jade slip on the second rack. This one belonged to Chu Yuyan, his personal apprentice. The first rack also contained 1 jade slip, upon which was written 2 characters, Fang Mu. His position was the highest, legacy apprentice. This jade slip represented the importance of Meng Hao's place in the East Pill Division of the Violet Fate Sect. Suddenly, Fang Mu's jade slip began to tremble. Cracking sounds rang out and fissures sprang out from the middle of the slip. In an instant, it exploded, transforming into flying ash. The moment the jade slip collapsed, white-robed Pill Demon was sitting cross-legged on the mountain's peak, looking off into the distance. A tremor ran through his body. He turned his head, looking down into the room with the jade slips. He held his gaze for a long time. His ancient face suddenly seemed to grow older. More wrinkles appeared. Meanwhile, in the center of the southern domain, in the Li clan's territory, was a location like the dwelling place of immortals. A roar filled the air, and a figure bristling with rage appeared. As the figure charged out, 7 or 8 others appeared behind him. The man held a shattered jade slip in his hand. It emitted a bright glow, in the middle of which was a face. It was none other than that of Meng Hao. This was the reflection stored in Li Dai's pupils the moment before he died. Meng Hao's face. "Dai," howled the old man, lifting his head to the sky and letting out a howl. A Dao child of the clan had been slain. Such a thing was said to have occurred to the Wang clan years ago, but it turned out to only be a rumor. Even still, it had shocked the southern domain. Now it really had happened to the Li clan. This time it was no falsehood. This Dao child really had met his death. "I don't care who you are," the old man raged. "You killed a Dao child of my Li clan. No matter which sect you belong to, you shall die." He and the 8 figures shot off into the distance. Behind them, even more cultivators of the Li clan followed, dozens. They transformed into prismatic beams of light that shot toward the rebirth cave at such speed it seemed possible they would tear a hole into the sky. At the same time, in the Wang clan of the southern domain, deep within that endless chain of mountains, was the lava cave of the 10th patriarch of the Wang clan. Suddenly, the lid of his coffin shattered into pieces, and the 10th Wang clan patriarch slowly rose to his feet. He walked into the lava, and as he did, it slowly cooled and grew dark, as did the cave. As one of the legendary Wang clan patriarchs once said, "All living things sow karma. Therefore karma must be reaped. With life comes death. Today I will help you. Yes, it's sowing karma, but in the future I will consume you, and that is the reaping of karma that you must pay. Today you will not die. However, that merely indicates that in the future you will belong completely to me." The 10th Wang clan patriarch laughed hoarsely as a red glow surrounded his body. "I haven't been out in so long," he muttered lightly, then disappeared. Near the rebirth cave, within the mental realm of the immortal's corpse, in the depths of the maze, Meng Hao stood next to Li Dai's corpse, breathing heavily. From the moment he'd revealed his true features, Meng Hao had been in deep thought. Li Dai had to die. The instant Meng Hao heard Jai Hongdong's words, Li Dai's fate was sealed. Only dead men can truly keep secrets. Su Qing had her secret, as did Meng Hao. Were word to get out, Su Qing would face unspeakable danger to her life. In fact, her death would be certain. Therefore, Li Dai had to die. There was a polar difference between dying beneath Fang Mu's hand and dying beneath Meng Hao's. Meng Hao was no longer the ignorant youth he had been when he first entered the cultivation world. In his years practicing cultivation in the Violet Fate sect, his understanding of things had grown exponentially. How could he not understand that the death of a Dao child of any sect would instantly be made known to that sect? They had techniques to reveal the appearance and aura of whoever did the slaying, and determining the exact location would not be difficult. The meat jelly might help cover the truth. However, Meng Hao wasn't confident enough to take that risk. Meng Hao was well aware of the situations and the ramifications. Therefore, he could not kill Li Dai while wearing the face of Fang Mu. So he had no choice but to discard that identity. As for Jai Hongdong, quasi-a member of the #1 clan in all the lands of South Heaven, well, if he died, Meng Hao could only imagine what the reaction of the Jai clan would be. Any powerful and fearsome clan would take serious action to handle the slaying of one of their clan members. That was a necessary reaction to maintain the dignity and power of the clan. Killing Jai Hongdong would be like killing the prince of an empire. An empire might have many princes, but such a thing would provoke severe catastrophe and endless problems. The Violet Fate sect would have no way to fight back. Based on Nzehai's description and Meng Hao's understanding, though it was a great power in the southern domain, compared to the Jai clan it was like a tiny mayfly. If a Violet Fate sect disciple killed a Jai clan member, that death wouldn't just involve the disciple. Most likely, the entire sect would collapse. As Meng Hao crushed his medallion, he thought of his master, the other Violet Furnace Lords, the green mountains and clear waters of the East Pill Division, and all his experiences there. Despite all that, Jai Hongdong had to die. If he didn't, Su Qing would be in incredible danger. Furthermore, if the Jai clan knew of the existence of a demon sealer, well, the mere thought of it caused Meng Hao's scalp to prickle with danger. Therefore, Jai Hongdong was doomed to perish. Only his death could ensure Su Qing's safety and allow her to stay in the Black Civ sect and completely fuse with Matriarch Phoenix without anyone suspecting her. And so, Meng Hao crushed the Violet Furnace Lord Medallion. It represented him casting off all ties with the Violet Fate sect. He had nothing to do with them now. He was Meng Hao. Fang Mu was merely an alias. Once that information was revealed, the Violet Fate sect would be able to offer a clear explanation. Most importantly, destroying the medallion indicated that he was forsaking the sect. It might even offer implication that Fang Mu was dead. When he left, the Li clan would be after his head. There would be nowhere in the vast southern domain to hide. He would be forced to truly disappear. Furthermore, before disappearing, he must prepare for what would surely be a vast series of storm-like upheavals. All of this had rushed through his mind the moment Su Qing's identity was revealed. Despite his breakthrough, he was hesitant at first. In the end, though, he was filled with resolve. "Master," he thought, slowly looking off in the direction of the Violet Fate sect, "I've been unfilial. Please view Fang Mu as dead." His eyes flashed as he looked back at Jai Hongdong. For the first time, they flickered with killing intent. It takes some time to analyze all of the thoughts that went through Meng Hao's head, but in actuality, they flashed through his head in an instant. As they did, they transformed into intense killing intent. This killing intent caused Jai Hongdong's mind to tremble. It was the first time he'd seen someone stare at him this way. In the past, people would attack him, but never with the desire to exterminate him. That was because his surname was Jai. The bloodline of the Jai clan pumped through his veins. In the southern domain, in the lands of South Heaven, few people would ever dare to provoke the Jai clan. "You want to kill me? Do you dare?" His eyes glittered coldly as he lifted his right hand and performed an incantation gesture. Immediately, Core Chi blossomed above his head. Again, the starfield appeared. This time, there were clearly far more blinking stars than there had been before. They covered everything above them, filling the area, then rushing down toward Meng Hao. As the bright starlight descended upon him, Meng Hao's killing intent continued to flicker just as before. The stars approached, and he lifted his right hand, striking forward. As he did, his blood-covered fingers caused everything to shake. Suddenly, a massive blood-colored palm appeared beneath him. The bloody palm grew larger, expanding. Next, the blood-death world came to being, within which Meng Hao's blood clones could be seen. They faced the incoming starlight and starfield, and immediately moved to defend against it. The blood palm shot upward like the hand of a giant, slamming into the starfield. A boom filled the air. Meng Hao's entire body trembled, and blood oozed from his mouth. The starfield began to collapse, and the starlight dissipated. However, Meng Hao's blood-death world also began to disintegrate. Meng Hao hadn't yet cultivated core qi and faced a cultivator who had. But he was vastly different from when he'd faced the azure-masked Black Land's cultivator. He wouldn't flee. He was much more evenly matched now. Jai Hongdong's expression changed. Blood sprayed from his mouth and he staggered backward. A fierce expression washed over his face, and he waved his right hand out. Other than that damned crazy lunatic from the Fang clan, you're the first to ever injure me. Damn you, Dungeon of Heaven, incarnate prison. His hand flashed an incantation gesture and waved toward the air above Meng Hao. A blue glow appeared, spreading out and transforming into a blue sky with white clouds, its own heaven. Even stranger, this sky covered Meng Hao only. Everywhere else looked just as it had before. Let ring the bell of the east. 9 exterminations. Use the will of the heavens to destroy the body. Use the gaze of the firmament to punish the spirit. Use the bloodline of the Jai clan to punish this person with heavenly tribulation. Veins of blood filled Jai Hongdong's eyes. He lowered his finger, and the blue swath of heaven above Meng Hao filled with roiling black clouds. Thunder crackled, and even more shockingly, it seemed lightning would soon fall. You want to kill me? You're not qualified. Jai Hongdong slapped his bag of holding, and a silver bell appeared in his hand. Immediately, a clear ring sounded out. Use the bloodline of the Jai clan and the guidance of the bell of the east to call forth the judgment of the will of the heavens against this Meng Hao. Die. His face distorted with rage as he let out a roar. This chapter was sponsored by Eric Matias, Henry Vertinen, Wei Chun and Joshua, Matthew Suzy, and Jeffrey Smith. I really wanted to translate this as Dead Men Tell No Tales, but it would have been a bit too much of a stretch from the original haha. Chapter 306, Slaying Jai. As Jai Hongdong's words resonated out, the sky above Meng Hao's head began to crackle with lightning. A bolt of lightning as thick as an arm shot down with incredible speed, heading directly toward Meng Hao. The violet core within him rotated rapidly, bursting forth with boundless cultivation base power. As it surrounded Meng Hao, his right hand shot upward. Massive amounts of violet qi appeared above him, transforming into a curved shield. A boom filled the air as the lightning slammed into the shield, causing it to shatter to pieces. Immediately following, a third, fourth, fifth lightning shield. A seemingly endless numbers of shields popped into place to resist the lightning. Soon the lightning bolt was as thin as a finger. Meng Hao then spit something out of his mouth, and the lightning mist appeared. It immediately swallowed up the lightning. Time to finish things, said Jai Hongdong with a cold laugh. He waved the bell again, causing a chiming sound to ring out. Immediately within the black clouds in the sky above Meng Hao, 3 lightning bolts intertwined with each other, seemingly on the verge of exploding down. A gleam appeared in Meng Hao's eyes. He had already reached a good estimation of his true battle power. He had no core qi, but he was definitely capable of fighting someone at the peak of the early core formation stage who did. However, he would not be able to secure victory. He would only be able to match blows. Meng Hao would have had the upper hand if he was fighting anyone other than Jai Hongdong, who possessed the bloodline of the Jai clan. If he were at this moment to once again encounter the azure-masked Black Land's cultivator, defeating him would be a simple matter. Realization flickered within him. Were I to cultivate core qi, he thought, or acquire a perfect core, then exterminating the early core formation stage would be as simple as turning over my hand. He calmly looked at Jai Hongdong and said, "You're right, it's time to finish things." He slapped his bag of holding and the blood-colored mask appeared in his hand. The mask of the blood immortal legacy. The minimum criteria to wear this mask was to have cultivation base at the core formation stage. Above Meng Hao, the 3 lightning bolts were condensing, preparing to descend upon him. Meng Hao slid the mask onto his face. As soon as it touched his skin, a tremor ran through his body. He instantly felt indescribable pain on his face. as if the mask were adhering permanently to his skin. At the same time, everything in his field of vision began to turn blood red. An evil viciousness suddenly appeared in his mind, replacing his intellect. A billowing killing intent shot up, as if he had been bedeviled. One word echoed in his mind: kill. Kill, kill. It seemed as if it were being spoken by an innumerable host of people, some men, some women, some old, some young. There even seemed to be the voices of animals and plants. It was as if all living things were speaking that one word directly into his ears. The world in front of him grew even more deeply crimson. Within the space of a single breath, everything was completely red. Within this world of redness, he felt his cultivation base suddenly explode. He was still of the early core formation stage, but in this instant, he was able to form a crimson core chi. The core chi was incredibly dense as it appeared above Meng Hao's head. If you studied it closely, you would be able to see that this core chi did not belong to Meng Hao, but rather to the blood immortal legacy mask. With the mask on his face, Meng Hao looked utterly bizarre. There was even a sinister demonic aura about him. Jai Hongdong looked at the mask. There were no facial features on it, only two eye holes, where Meng Hao's bright red eyes could be seen. The redness of his eyes was the same color as the core chi hovering above him. His green robe was now stained with redness. It fluttered about him, making him look like some sort of blood devil. "What magical item is this?" said Jai Hongdong, his expression flickering. An intense feeling of danger appeared inside him as soon as Meng Hao donned the mask. He actually had not experienced many things in life, so this feeling caused his entire body to tremble. Without thinking, he rang the bell in his hand once more. Above Meng Hao, the 3 lightning bolts shot down. Meng Hao laughed, grating even though the mask obscured his smile. He raised his right hand toward the 3 lightning bolts, clenching it into a fist. The crimson core chi above him transformed into a massive fist, a rumbling roar filling the air as it shot toward the lightning bolts. The resulting boom shook heaven and earth. The 3 lightning bolts collapsed into pieces. The sky above even trembled. Jai Hongdong's face fell and his eyes were filled with veins of blood. The bell in his hand suddenly rang and he coughed up a massive mouthful of blood. His expression grew fierce and let out a shrill howl. "Let the will of the heavens descend, trial by tribulation." As his words rang out, the clouds in the sky above Meng Hao suddenly redoubled, layer after layer. Within the thick blackness, 9 lightning bolts appeared, seemingly congealing the will of the heavens as they prepared to strike. An aura which seemed powerful enough to destroy all living things suddenly spread out. A look of consternation appeared on the face of Su Qing, who stood off in the distance. It was at this exact moment, however, that Meng Hao spoke. His voice was hoarse and bizarrely mesmerizing. Without a face, Meng Hao only spoke 3 words of the blood immortal legacy's divine ability. Without a face, a single word: the flames of war unify, sundered clouds, a bloody rain, seas that cover the sky, capture the gods, advance the troops, fire consumes the towers, forge all spirits and bloodlines into the 9 killing powers. These words actually contained 9 blood immortal divine abilities. Only by wearing the mask could they be utilized. A shocking magical technique of the ancient Doom clan, unseen for tens of thousands of years, appeared in Meng Hao's outstretched hand. As soon as the words were out of his mouth, the massive amounts of core chi above his head suddenly began to spread out, transforming into a massive face. The face had no features whatsoever except for 2 eyes. It was nothing but a sea of red. The left eye was also completely red. Shockingly though, within the position of the right was Meng Hao. The massive face shot toward the 9 descending lightning bolts. Everything shook. Even though this place was not real, it could still be rocked by frantic insanity. The 9 lightning bolts shattered, the black clouds disintegrated, and as the face collided with the spirit punishing heaven, it too thoroughly collapsed. The faceless magic transformed into a gigantic face, an abstruse left eye and Meng Hao in the right, with no other features. Jai Hongdong's scalp went numb, filled with the intense sensation of death inundating his body. Jai Hongdong was about to continue, but his words caught in his throat. The faceless magic, transformed into an enormous face, appeared directly in front of him. Meng Hao, standing in the right eye's position, lifted his hand and seized Jai Hongdong's neck. His grip cut off Jai Hongdong's words, the young man's expression twisting. He wanted to struggle, but his cultivation base was suppressed. He had no way to fight back. His eyes filled with terror and dread. He could sense Meng Hao's killing intent, ferocious and without equal. Yet he couldn't believe that in the lands of South Heaven, someone would dare slay someone of the bloodline of the Jai clan. This concept was deeply rooted in his heart. It was something that had existed within him since he was very small. At the moment, he was in a crisis, but his fear quickly disappeared, only to be replaced with grimness. He glared at Meng Hao, and a snide smile appeared on his face. He couldn't speak, but his eyes spoke the words. "Do you dare to kill me?" The message was immediately transmitted into Meng Hao's heart. He did not beg for mercy, nor did he speak any ingratiating words. In this moment of life and death, he could not forget about the dignity and nobility of the bloodline of the Jai clan. He lifted his chin and stared coldly at Meng Hao. Meng Hao was quiet for a moment, then hoarsely said, "I really don't want to kill you." The redness in his eyes began to fade, replaced with that which was Meng Hao. Hearing this, a cold smile twisted Jai Hongdong's lips. Suddenly, Meng Hao's right hand tightened. A popping sound could be heard, and Jai Hongdong's eyes went wide. His neck was smashed into nothing. The power of the blood immortal which coursed through Meng Hao's hand suddenly poured into Jai Hongdong's body. He trembled, and his body immediately began to wither. All the blood in his body congealed into his forehead. A mark of blood appeared, congealing into a collection of the bloodline of the Jai clan, which suddenly flew out into the air. The blood merged into the forehead of the mask that Meng Hao wore. The mask rippled, as if it were excited. Meng Hao loosened his grip, dropping Jai Hongdong's remains. He closed his eyes, then lifted his right hand to remove the mask. When it came off, it revealed how pale Meng Hao's face was. The power of the mask was shocking. Were Meng Hao's spiritual sense not as powerful as it was, then he would never have been able to maintain control of his own mind. In the short period that he had wielded the power of the mask, he realized that he had lost half of a 60-year cycle of longevity. The price of wearing the mask was extremely high. Meng Hao turned to Su Qing, his face pale. He softly said, "We're safe now. No one will know your secret." Su Qing stared blankly at Meng Hao, tears filling her eyes. She knew the price Meng Hao had paid to protect her secret. He had killed a Jai clan member and had thus provoked great calamity. In order to not implicate his sect, he had forsaken it. Now, he had no choice but to become a wanderer. He would never be able to return to the southern domain, nor would he be able to hide from the Jai clan. Furthermore, he was only a core formation cultivator. Su Qing bit her lip, tears sliding down her face without touching the ground. Meng Hao lifted his hand to wipe them away. "Don't cry," he said, smiling. "There's a long road ahead. Who knows when it is that we will meet again?" His face was pale as he smiled, which served only to imprint his words deeper in Su Qing's heart. "I'm leaving now," he continued. "This place will be collapsing soon." He looked deeply into her eyes, knowing that after he turned to leave, they would be as separated as if one was alive and the other dead. Even if he made it out with his life, who knew how many years would pass before he could return? When he was able to return, who knew if the beautiful woman who stood in front of him now would still be the same as before? But Meng Hao had no regrets. Jai Hongdong had to die. Be it for Su Qing or for himself, only Jai Hongdong's death could assure their continued life. Hiding Jai Hongdong's body in the mask would be useless against the Jai clan's power. In fact, the consequences might be worse. Perhaps a third path existed. Unfortunately, things had happened too quickly for him to find it. Trying to kill as Meng Hao and live as Fang Mu would have shown, he didn't understand the terrifying power of the Jai clan. Had he attempted to do that, then there was a 90% probability that the entire Violet Fate sect would be sucked into destruction. That was a choice he refused to make. Meng Hao turned, and as he did, he suddenly realized someone was embracing him from behind. It felt soft and warm. "I'll wait for you," said Su Qing. Regardless of past, present, or future, they would be together. Chapter 307, Fang Mu as Meng Hao. When Jai Hongdong died, something happened on the other side of the Milky Way Sea, on the border of the vast eastern lands, atop a white mountain. The crags were completely white, seemingly without blemishes or impurities. In the eastern lands, this place was called White Mountain. Somewhere on White Mountain was a cistern. This cistern was so deep that, according to the legends, the waters within went down as far as the mountain was tall. An old man sat next to the cistern, gaunt and expressionless, holding a fishing pole. The fishing line descended into the cistern, motionless at the moment. Suddenly, the fishing line went taut. The old man's expression didn't change. He simply pulled up with his right hand. A bizarre, miserable shriek pierced the air as the fishing line flew up. Hooked on the end was a globule of light. The light was comprised of countless glowing threads with faces on them. In the center was a middle-aged man whose expression was one of terror. He dropped to his knees and begged for mercy. The old man looked at him and coolly said, "For me to fish your karma out of all the multitude of living creatures is nothing but good fortune for you, right? Why beg for mercy?" His hand made a clutching motion in midair, and the globule of light flew into his hand. As he grabbed it, the middle-aged man within let out a defiant howl, the kind that comes the moment before death. In addition, he emitted the chi of the great circle of the late nascent soul stage. The old man allowed the chi to emanate, then popped the globule into his mouth. Crunching sounds filled the air and he swallowed. Blood oozed from the corners of his mouth, which he quickly licked up. His eyes filled with a bright glow. "Ah, the flavor of karma," he murmured. After some time passed, he looked up into the sky, then suddenly dropped to his knees and prostrated himself. He kowtowed 9 times, then raised himself up and looked at the cistern. After a while, he frowned. He thrust his hand out, and a shattered jade slip appeared in his hand. His eyes glowed. A son of Jade died in the southern domain. He pinched down onto the jade slip, and the image of a face appeared in his mind. The face belonged to none other than Meng Hao. At the same time, a sharp voice echoed out in his mind. "Patriarch, the person who killed me is named Fang Mu of the Violet Fate sect, also known as Meng Hao." The voice belonged to none other than Jai Hongdong. This was the last bit of will that remained in him before he died. The voice was sad and shrill, filled with intense resentment. There was no way Meng Hao could possibly have predicted that this would happen. The Jai clan had a method with which to transmit voices along with their death. Meng Hao was only aware of the ability to transmit images. Extracting the clan blood from Jai Hongdong before death had caused him pain. As a result, his consciousness was thrown into chaos. He'd only managed to transmit Meng Hao's name, completely forgetting about Su Qing. "Useless fool," said the old man with a slight frown. However, useless as he might have been, the blood of the Jai clan still flowed within his veins. How could mortals have killed him so easily? Although the Violet Fate sect. Shockingly, this old man viewed cultivators as mere mortals. He flicked his wide sleeve, transforming the jade slip into ash. Then he leaped up into the air, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Only his sinister voice remained, echoing throughout the mountain. "The southern domain. I haven't been there for years." Outside the rebirth cave, 8 old men sat cross-legged beneath the banner of the Jai clan. One by one, their eyes opened. Astonishment and disbelief shined out as they rose to their feet. Their eyes were filled with veins of blood, and intensely violent killing intent poured out. This shocking sight shook everyone in the area. One by one, cultivators from the other sects and clans looked over in astonishment as they watched indescribable frenzied rage and killing intent rising up from the 8 old men. All of them were nascent soul eccentrics, with extraordinary cultivation bases. Their combined killing intent was enough to shake the heavens, rock the earth, and change the color of the wind. "One of the sons of Jai has perished." The 8 men exchanged glances. Amidst their rising killing intent, they could also sense the mutual fear which caused their hearts to tremble. Based on the laws of the Jai clan, they knew that if they did not find Jai Hongdong's killer, then they would be sent to the grave with Jai Hongdong as burial offerings. In fact, all of the clan members within their sphere of influence would instantly be exterminated. That was the price to be paid if they did not find the killer and bring him back to the eastern lands. One among the 8 men lifted his hand to slap his bag of holding. Immediately, fragments of a jade slip appeared, 8 of them. Each of the other old men took one, and then they held them out to join them together. Immediately, a warm glow shone out. The light climbed into the sky, and the 8 old men's faces were incredibly grim as they studied it. The cultivators of the surrounding sects were also closely observing. Within the glow appeared a figure. He wore a mask, making it impossible to determine what he looked like. However, the mask overflowed with bloody killing intent. It immediately caused the hearts of all onlookers to tremble. That's the mask of the blood, immortal legacy. That's the mask of the blood, immortal of the ancient Doom clan. You're right. During the last Blood Immortal Legacy tournament, I saw it with my own eyes. But didn't the Li clan say that there was some accident, and that it was lost within the Blood Immortal Legacy zone? Of course, the great sects didn't believe them, and conducted their own investigations. However, in the end they determined that the Li clan didn't acquire the legacy. When the 8 old men heard these words, their eyes glittered and their killing intent grew more intense. They looked at the Li clan's pillar of light, causing their faces to instantly flicker. Before any explanations could be made, though, 8 beams of light suddenly approached from off in the distance. They screamed forward, and as they approached, it was clear that Li clan elders were approaching. The old man in the lead cried, "Li clan Dao child Li Dea perished in this place. Fellow Taoists, do you recognize this person?" He waved his hand, and an illusory screen appeared, upon which was the image of Meng Hao. At the exact same moment, the masked figure within the beam of light protected by the Jai clans had slipped suddenly distorted, transforming into another image. Again, it was none other than Meng Hao. Everyone in the area fixed their eyes on the two glowing screens and the person depicted there. Their minds reeled. They reeled because of the news that the Dao child of the Li clan had perished. They reeled because all of the clans and sects of the southern domain suddenly put the pieces of the puzzle together. Now they knew why the Jai clan had produced the broken Jade slip, and why the figure there was the same as that produced by the Li clan. One patriarch from the Golden Frost clan gasped, "Could it be a son of the Jai clan? Whoever did it has provoked a great disaster, the Jai clan of the eastern lands. How could they let this rest? Which sect's disciple is the killer?" Everything fell deathly silent. All cultivators slowly backed away. That looks like that guy Meng Hao who disappeared a few years ago. Meng Hao, the sublime spirit scripture, I remember, that is Meng Hao. Meng Hao. A great buzz of conversation filled the area surrounding the basin. The eyes of the Jai clan old men boiled with killing intent, as did those of the Li clan elders. The Li clan elder gritted his teeth. This Meng Hao is still within the corpse's illusory land. Seal off the area. No teleportation. No treasure will let him escape. The surrounding nascent soul elders shot off in all directions. Clearly, they planned to seal the area and prevent anyone from teleporting away. One of the sons of the Jai clan has perished here. Fellow Taoists of the southern domain, please remain here and wait until all details are brought to light. Until then, no one is permitted to leave. Immediately, 4 of the 8 Jai clan elders dispersed. Obviously, they did not put complete faith in the methods of the Li clan and would implement their own sealing measures. "This person possesses arts of transformation," said another Jai clan elder with a cold snort. "That doesn't matter. Having killed a Jai clan member, he's stained with karma. Once he emerges, we'll sense him." It was at this moment that suddenly, a freezing chi suddenly blasted out from near the rebirth cave. It contained a fearsome potency, the might of spirit severing. Slowly, a tall figure strode out from within the basin. He was a middle-aged man, wearing a long, orange robe. As he strode out, he attracted the attention of all of the surrounding cultivators from the various sects. They all immediately recognized him. This was the most powerful expert present among the Jai clan. His cultivation base was at the spirit severing level. When all of the other clan patriarchs had retreated from the basin surrounding the rebirth cave, he had remained behind. He knew that the cave was a fearsome place, even for someone of the spirit severing stage, and that unless absolutely necessary, no one would enter it. In fact, none of the patriarchs from the various local sects were willing to enter it. At most, they would approach the mouth of the cave. This man had not retreated and as such, had engaged in quite a few battles with various strange life forms in the vicinity of the cave. As he emerged from the area, his face was grim. When he reached the 8 old men from the Jai clan, all of them respectfully clasped hands in salute. The middle-aged man opened his hand to reveal some shattered powder. That was all which remained of a jade slip. "The killer is Fang Mu of the Violet Fate sect, also known as Meng Hao," the man said coolly. "That was the message transmitted by Jai Hongdong before his death. This matter has even stirred Patriarch Jai Fang, who is currently hurrying here from the eastern lands." Though his voice was calm, it contained an intense threatening air, which caused the hearts of the members of all the surrounding sects to fill with trembling. Fang Mu Meng Hao. How could that be possible? Fang Mu of the East Pill division of the Violet Fate sect is also the same guy everyone was looking for throughout the southern domain that year, Meng Hao. No wonder no one could ever find Meng Hao. He was hiding in the Violet Fate sect. He even became a legacy apprentice. Amidst the commotion, one gaze after another came to fall upon the pillar of light belonging to the Violet Fate sect. Within, the faces of the Violet Fate sect cultivators instantly began to change. And Zehai's face fell. Next to him, Lin Heilong gasped and rose to his feet. Wu Dinkyu stared mutely for a moment, and then his face grew incredibly grim. A profound sense of crisis filled the minds and hearts of all the Violet Fate sect disciples. It was at this moment that, within the Violet Fate sect's pillar of light, the eyes of the spirit-severing patriarchs slowly opened. This chapter was sponsored by Jeremiah Cullen, William Magallanes, and David Chong. Jiafang's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Jiafang. Jai is a family name. Fang is the same Fang as Fang Mu.